Chapter 51. What on earth is this? I went up there personally to open the gates of hell and kick this bastard into the abyss, and now I'm hiring him as a laborer? Isn't this putting the cart before the horse? One might think so. In fact, it's only natural to think that way. After all, I'm using bad guys to catch bad guys. But then again, look at Shiryu, Rizatsu, and Myron. All three of them are technically sinners, so putting them on the seats of the 10 kings is also backward in a sense. Actually, let's leave Shiryu out. That guy probably spent 1,000 years agonizing over his guilt. Should I cut Myron some slack too? Didn't he cry and say she couldn't do it? They aren't exactly innocent, but there are definitely mitigating circumstances. Anyway, if I'm using guys like them as the 10 kings, why shouldn't I use Jaman? Looking at it this way, it feels like I'm putting together a damn suicide squad. With that thought, I arrived at Naraka. In the distance, I saw Jaman floating, curled up in a ball. I know you're awake. Despite my call, Jaman didn't even pretend to hear me, keeping his eyes shut in silence. Oh, playing the I can't hear you game? Bastard, you think I haven't been in your position before? Open your eyes, you prick. I picked up a stone from the ground and hurled it straight at Jaman's leg. Whack. With a sharp crack, Jaman began to spin wildly in the air. His spinning slowly decelerated, and only then did Jaman open his eyes. Ugh! Looking considerably dizzy, Jaman clutched his forehead and turned toward me. Why does the likes of you seek a sinner such as I? Let's do a job together. Of course there's no pay, no honor, you'll be cursed to high heaven, and people will hold massive grudges against you, but you can consider it atonement. Atonement? Ha! What meaning does that have at this point? His cynical smile was a dead ringer for Raiwa's. Or rather, I suppose it's Raiwa who looks like Jaman. But why are their personalities so different? Truly, I crossed my arms, waiting for him to continue. Jaman watched me wordlessly, his gaze fixed on me before he looked down, lost in thought. What use could you possibly have for a sinner like me? A sinner giving me backtalk? If you've done wrong, you bastard, you just say yes, I understand, shut up and follow me. That's how it works, brat. Then I shall ask but one thing. If I were to betray you once more, what would you do? Why entrust me with work? If you were actually planning to betray me, you wouldn't have even brought it up. Besides, aren't you just floating aimlessly in Naraka because you've realized everything is futile? I saw the corner of Jaman's lip twitch. It was such a minute tremor that if it weren't for me, anyone else would have missed it. I simply needed time to think. Since you can't even die anymore, thinking I just want to float here and do nothing, or I want to die without doing anything, counts as thinking, I suppose. I see that from the start I never had the option to refuse. You catch on quick. From the moment I came looking for you, your fate was already sealed. You're working with me. Don't even think about running away. I'll chase you to the very end of hell. Since we have already met at the very end of hell, how could I possibly think of fleeing? Because you're exactly the type who would, you devious bastard. I swallowed the words that were right on the tip of my tongue. Words have power, no need to invite trouble by speaking it into existence. Anyway, get out of there. We have a lot to do. Understood. As expected, Jaman used an unnamed Kido to slowly drift out of Naraka. I smirked that he could have gotten out whenever he wanted, he was just staying in there on purpose. So what is it you intend to do? I'm going to create hell. I could practically see him thinking, what the hell is he talking about? I guess it's good that his youth makes his expressions easier to read. Setting aside those idle thoughts, I relayed the same explanation I gave to Shiryu. I told him about the 6 realms of reincarnation, the 10 kings of hell, the 8 hot and 8 cold hells, and even the Nether King Palace and the Pure Spirit Hall. The Nether King Palace and the Pure Spirit Hall, are you imitating the Soul King Palace and the Zero Divisions Hall? So what? If a design is good, you use it. What? You got a problem? When I jerked my chin at him, Jaman quietly looked away. Regardless, once the explanation was over, Jaman nodded and began to trace characters in the air. That's impressive. How are you doing that? I am simply tweaking the principles of Kido. Much like how one gathers spiritual power to manifest the phenomenon of a demon art in reality, I gather it at the tip of my finger like this. As he moved his fingertip, a blue line formed following its trail. It carves the letters into the air. Of course, since I am writing with spiritual power rather than ink, the script will fade naturally over time, so you need not worry. I see. Having finished his explanation, Jaman continued writing. After summarizing my points, he rubbed his chin and tilted his head slightly. Before constructing this hell, I believe the priority should be establishing the laws that will judge sin. Look at you, actually making sense for once. How unexpected. When I let out a dry laugh, Jaman gave a thin smile and shook his head. To maintain a great noble clan for 1,000 years, one must be well-versed in such matters. Besides, who do you think it was that cast the very first sinner into hell? Acting all high and mighty when you're just as much of a sinner yourself. Brat. His habit of shutting his mouth when he's out of arguments hasn't changed a bit. Seeing that he was exactly the same as in the old days was actually a bit funny. He might be a total bastard whose sins were great enough to spark endless rumors, but in a sense, it meant he was also the most unwavering man I knew. All right, then establishing the laws comes first. Yes. I shall leave that part to you, master. Did I hear that right? You bastard, I brought you here to work and the first thing you do is try to dump the workload on me? Do you want your skull cracked open like the prisoners over there? Do you truly think it appropriate for a sinner to be the one to ordain the law? It takes one to know one. You're the one who's committed the sins, so you should know them better than anyone. You're going to organize everything from A to Z and bring it to me. The types of crimes, the methods of punishment, the grounds for justification, everything down to the smallest detail. Then you are essentially telling me to do it all alone. You organize it and bring it for my approval. Naturally, I'll look through it all, and if anything looks weird, I'll make you rewrite the whole damn thing. Without even paper or ink. I'll go get them for you. By W. Hen, must this be completed? As soon as possible. Seeing Jaman staring at me with a "what did I just hear" expression, I gave him a wide grin. It's too late for regrets now. Grit your teeth and endure it. This is tyranny. And what you did to the Soul Society wasn't? Ugh, brat, trying to play victim? You're asking for a beating. The more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got. What gives him the right to talk back so smugly? Why are you looking at me like that? No, I was just thinking, you haven't been hit even once yet. Maybe that's why you keep running your mouth, it's getting on my nerves. I was hit plenty back in the Soul Society. The sinners down here in hell die once a day. I'll hit you once. Just once. It's a wake-up call so you'll work properly from now on. I'll make it hurt just enough so you don't die. You said you wouldn't hit. This bastard. Backtalk again? Gasp. Shutting your mouth now is too late, brat. I smirked and clenched my fist. Yeah, I'll be gentle, just enough not to kill you. Don't worry. I've had plenty of practice making lumps on people's heads the size of mountain ranges. Discipline. Gworg. Boom. A sound like a heavy palm slamming onto a wooden desk erupted as Jaman's head bobbed violently. Kehuug. Grok. How is it? It hurts just enough not to kill you, right? I've recently mastered the art of holding back, so you won't even be able to faint. This is tyranny. You prick, you want another one? Why, you said you'd only hit me once. I can't let it slide since you keep talking back. Take one more. Boom. Gyararg. I cackled as I watched Jaman collapse to the floor, clutching his head and trembling. Be grateful that's all you get, brat. Normally, I'd have torn off your limbs and head and tossed you into the Avicii hell. Ugh, yes. Anyway, brushes, paper, and ink, right? That's all you need? I'll be right back. Before the bewildered Jaman, I punched the air, shattering the boundary. Jaman, who actually possessed quite a brain, realized that I had just smashed the barrier between the three worlds and hell. He looked horrified. How could you? How else? I punched it. Anyway, wait here. Crossing the boundary into the Soul Society, I headed straight for the Shiba estate. I could have gone to Rosatsu or Myron, but I didn't feel like wrestling with gatekeepers again, so I chose the most comfortable option. It seemed they hadn't forgotten my face yet. The gatekeeper immediately fetched Shiryu. I received paper, ink, and brushes from him. And since I needed water and a stone to grind the ink, I took those as well before heading back. Here. Brushes, ink, and paper. To cross the boundary so easily. It worked when I tried. I placed the 4 treasures of the study before Jaman, who was still in shock, and patted his shoulder. Let's work well together from now on, all right? Yes. Good, now you're answering properly. I was nodding in satisfaction when it happened. Flash. A single beam of light descended, illuminating hell. It was an intense light, powerful enough to reach the very edge of hell, the darkest depths of Naraka. What on earth is that? Jaman voiced his confusion, but I knew. Kagaya? What I felt coming from the direction of the light was undoubtedly Kagaya's spiritual power. Chapter 52. Good things come all at once. Say when a person receives a shock that is too great, they remain in a defenseless state for a while. It's like a server crashing because the brain's processing speed can't keep up with an excessive amount of information. Like a server bursting due to an overload of traffic. That is exactly the situation I am in right now. My brain cannot keep up with the circumstances. To be honest, since falling into the world of Bleach, I have only had this experience exactly 3 times. The first was when I first opened my eyes in this world, the second was when I met the Soul King, and the third is right now. Just what the hell is going on? No, I have a vague inkling, but that only makes it harder to understand. I called it shedding his shell, but did he really achieve enlightenment and become a Buddha? At this point, I'm starting to wonder if Kubo is actually a god, dropping me into the Bleach universe just to toy with me for his own amusement. I mean, if that's not it, then none of this makes any sense. Why is Kagaya's spiritual power coming from over there? What on earth is that light? And if the person over there really is Kagaya, why did he choose to descend back into this shithole of all places? And why did he go to Hosuki instead of coming to me? Just what is that? I snapped out of it at Jaman's question, which pierced right through the most important point, and wiped my face with my hands. Yeah, what does any of that matter right now? If I don't know, I can just ask him directly. Jukiyama Kagaya. He's the first one you cast down into hell. What does that mean? Hard to believe, right? I can hardly believe my own eyes either. It's not like my senses have gone dull, which is exactly why it's so hard to believe. For now, just stay here and do your job. I think I need to head over there for a bit. The dazed Jaman couldn't muster a reply, but I didn't need one anyway. I left him there and dashed toward the crater where Kagaya's presence was radiating. When I arrived at the crater, I found Kagaya, his body draped in orange-red cloth, talking with Hosuki. He even had a halo floating behind his head. I had been wondering what was illuminating hell from all directions earlier. Apparently it was that. I thought this world just borrowed some concepts from Buddhism, but even when he shed his shell through enlightenment, I had my doubts. To think he actually became a literal Buddha. But seriously, what the fuck? A real Buddha? Talk about a jump scare. They seemed to be discussing something important, so I decided to wait until they were finished and I sat down on some cooled lava nearby and watched Kagaya in silence. If he achieved enlightenment, why wouldn't he just live a comfortable life with his feet up? Why set foot back in this shithole? Is it because he's a Buddha? Or is the world you go to after shedding the shell so packed with work that he came down to scout a successor? Which one could it be? I'm actually quite curious. What are they talking about for so long? I felt like I'd been waiting for 20 minutes, yet the conversation showed no signs of ending. Becoming genuinely curious about their topic, I closed my eyes and focused my ears on the conversation. Instead of listening from so far away, "Why don't you come closer, master?" Rather than hearing a voice, it felt as though the words were hammered directly into my brain. I winced and looked toward Kagaya. Kagaya, who had been conversing with Hosuki until a moment ago, was now looking my way with a smile. What, you can feel that? How could I not notice when you were staring so intently and straining to hear? The way he spoke with a gentle smile really made him look like a Buddha. Well, he technically is one. Even after becoming a Buddha, you still have a way of leaving people speechless. I merely spoke the truth. And you still won't concede a single word as usual. It's strange. If anyone else acted like that, they'd be so incredibly annoying I'd want to beat them to a pulp, but when this guy does it, I don't really get angry. Maybe it's because he really only says the right things. As I strode forward, Hosuki's form, previously obscured by the light, became visible. He appeared to have fallen asleep with his eyes closed. No, wait. Seeing the way he groaned and frowned, he hadn't fallen asleep. He had fallen into deep, agonizing contemplation. Well, I'm sure Kagaya handled it well. It's been a while. Life's been good since the Enlightenment. Since I have escaped suffering, my heart is always at peace. Has Master been well in the meantime? I've been getting by. It was somewhat relaxed when I was on my own, but lately there's so much work I'm practically dying. The 3 worlds are a mess. Because of some damn spiritual power, even innocent people are getting dragged into hell. And don't get me started on the absolute shitshow they've made of the Soul King who sacrificed himself for them. I can't even begin to describe how shocked I was to see the mountain of literal shit they've piled up. That if I listed them out, there are really only 2 main issues, so people might ask why I'm whining about it being hard. Yeah, sure, if it were two normal tasks, I'd knock them out with a laugh. If they were reasonable tasks. That is, but every single one of these bastards' problems is like a nuclear bomb. We're talking little boy and fat man levels of disaster. And then they tell me to manage it? Of course my head is going to split open. As I let out a deep sigh and scratched my head, Kagaya gave a bitter smile and comforted me. That truly sounds like an ordeal. You have worked very hard indeed. To think I'd live to hear those words from you. Then, since you're here, why don't you help me out before you go? As Master knows, I have no physical body, so I cannot offer physical assistance. As I said before I shed my shell, I have cast aside my flesh and spirit, only my mind remains, having escaped the cycle of reincarnation. I pulled a face at Kagaya's words. Who on earth would be crazy enough to ask a Buddha to go out and kill? Not that. I've decided to divide hell, so I need to create laws to judge sins accordingly. I want you to help with that. I don't exactly trust the guy I currently have working on it. Ah. You speak of the first ancestor. What? You know about him? How could I not? Is he not the first sinner in this world to reach the very bottom of Naraka? Living beings with sins of that magnitude can be counted on one hand. Was that an insult, or was he just stating that he knows who Jaman is? Well, I'm sure it wasn't an insult. There's no way a Buddha would engage in teabagging by saying, "Oh yeah, I know that piece of shit well, haha." While I was traveling the three worlds after my enlightenment to preach and deliver sentient beings from their agony, I came to know of it. How could I not know when the world was torn asunder, the gates of hell opened, and a perfectly living being fell into the abyss? It wasn't a joke, right? Let's assume it wasn't. Anyway, give him a hand and help draft the laws. If it is a task to save suffering sentient beings, what is there that I cannot do? So you're saying you're not doing it just because I asked? As I gave a bitter laugh, Kagaya replied with nothing but a serene smile. Well, I just said it on a whim, so I didn't think much of it. So why did you come to see Hosuki? Because there was a child suffering as he watched the agony of sentient beings. I gave him a short sermon to help him. You didn't help him reach enlightenment? The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. How can that which has no form be explained with words? I can point out the direction, but one must walk the path solely with their own strength. This is some difficult stuff. I scratched my head and nodded. Anyway, I'll be counting on you for a while. I'll go take care of those things over there in the meantime. Yes. Then I shall go with the ancestor of the Tsuneyashiro clan to refine the laws. Yeah. Do your best. He definitely just teabagged him. He's basically saying he's the superior now. Well, at least I don't have to worry about the legal side of things now. Jaman will explain things better than I can, and Kagaya will be more impartial than I am. Having a good disciple makes life easy. I gave a smirk and went back to smashing the heads of the sinners. A long time has passed since then. I end that interval. The number of sinners cast into hell has exceeded 1,000. Now, even if I only spend 2 minutes on each person, it takes 2,000 minutes. That's a whopping 33 hours, wow. A day has become 48 hours long, like hell it has. I'm currently spending from morning to night just cracking the skulls of these convict bastards. Still, I haven't abandoned hope. Because the promised time is almost here, 50 years. The time promised by Shiryu, Rizatsu, and Murin. To be more precise, it wasn't a promise, but rather the predicted lifespan of those three based on their conditions when we last met. Lifespan, promise, what does it matter? It's all fine. It just means the workforce is about to increase. Just a little more suffering, it's almost time. What are you saying? I'm not talking to you, so stay out of it. Ayakak. It's tearing. I'm being torn apart. If you hate being torn apart, I'll just fold you up. At the exact moment I folded the waist of a sinner who had used his dick however he pleased, like I was doing origami, it happened. Finally. I felt the familiar spiritual pressure of those three. And at the same time, another familiar presence approached from behind. I turned around and locked eyes with Kagaya, who was carrying 10 volumes of law books of incredible thickness. I don't know what happened in the meantime, but Kagaya's face was glowing. No joke, he was literally shining. Actually, whatever. None of that mattered. Is it done? Yes. The compilation of the law code of the 10 kings is complete. It's finished. I cheered with a bright smile. Finally, I'm free from this unpaid, no-break labor. Finally, freedom. I caught a glimpse of Jaman looking delighted, though he looked like he'd been run through the ringer by Kagaya. But since that's his own karma, I couldn't care less. Chapter 53, Cleanup Duty. The 50-year sentence of unpaid, holiday-less, infinite labor in hell has finally come to an end. Shiryu, Myron, Rosatsu, and J. Omen have all gathered, and the law code of the 10 kings which I had entrusted to Kagaya and Jaman is finally complete. I trembled with an uncontrollable surge of joy. Finally. I'm free. F***ck, I can finally get some rest, damn it. As I stood there shaking with delight, the silhouettes of 3 people appeared in the distance. It seemed entering hell had restored them to their prime. The 3 of them bore the youthful faces I remembered from our earliest days. Honestly, none of that mattered. Right now, just seeing them and being greeted with a smile was more than enough. Wawahaha. It's so damn good to see you bastards. The moment their silhouettes became clear, I sprinted like a madman and pulled the 3 of them into a crushing embrace. The trio, who had been conversing amongst themselves, turned toward me in confusion before recoiling in horror and trying to bolt, but I was far faster, no chance. Did you think 50 years of non-stop hide-and-seek and tag in the depths of hell was just for show? My skills aren't something to be f***ed with. Stay still and be the willing victims of my bear hug. Ugh. My back. My back. KH. Master. Please maintain your dignity. Kayak. Master. KH. Ugh. Ouch, my ears. The trio's screaming symphony ringing in my ears finally snapped me back to reality, and I set them down on the ground. But even after releasing them, the boiling emotions within me were too much to handle. I charged toward the nearest sinner. The sinner, who had been trudging along the path near the lava flows, turned at the sudden sound of footsteps. The moment our eyes met, he shrieked in terror. Huh? Wait, Wawaraf? Why? Why? It's not my turn yet. There is an order for arriving in hell, but there is no set order for when you get pulverized. Pure, unadulterated, mindless violence descended upon the sinner's skull. Well, no. Simply being a sinner who fell to hell is reason enough. Gebdash? Phew, that feels better. After compressing his head down to the level of his chest, my emotions finally settled. I returned to where Kagaya and the 4 prospective 10 kings were waiting. Apparently, the pain in their lower backs hadn't subsided yet. All 3 were hunched over in identical poses, clutching their waists. Sorry. I got a bit too excited. I must have misjudged my strength. No. It's fine. It was an outcome we somewhat anticipated. KH, aside from the shock, we are all right. I scratched my head as the other 4 nodded along with Shiryu's words. Just what kind of image do you guys have of me in your heads? First, let me fix your backs. Wait a second. I pressed firmly on the pressure points along their spines, releasing the shocked muscles. It didn't take long for the pain to fade and for them to return to normal. Ha! You've lived over 1,000 years and yet you're exactly the same. In a way, it's impressive. I'm not usually like this, but I've been smashing the skulls of these shitty sinners for 50 years without a single second of sleep. Ha! My personality's gone to hell. I lose control of my emotions sometimes. You guys will just have to bear with it. Not a single wink of sleep for 50 years. How are you even alive? Maybe I'm already dead. Well, whatever. Once I finish offloading the once I finish the handover and get some sleep, I'll be back to normal. When I reached out to pat Rosatsu's head as she stared at me with a stunned face, she scowled and pulled back. Of course, pulling back didn't mean she could escape. Her head was just at the perfect height for patting. I couldn't help myself. Even if I look younger, I've lived over 1,000 ye. Ugh, I told you to stop patting me. Teasing an annoyed Rosatsu is always fun too. I don't care if you've lived 1,000 years or a day. To my eyes, you're still a brat. Have you already forgotten the time you nearly wrecked the 3 worlds because you couldn't tell *T from me so? TCH. What a brat. No, honestly, to still be this much of a smart aleck after a millennium is an achievement in itself. Truly a talent fit for a king of hell. Chuckling to myself, I cleared a spot on the ground with my foot and sat down. Well, what are you waiting for? Sit. Make yourselves comfortable. At my words, Jaman, who had been lying face down in the dirt, slowly crawled up and Saturday, what on earth did Kagaya do to him to make him end up like that? I shot Kagaya a dubious look, but he merely responded with a serene, gentle smile. Sheesh. I'm going to make sure I don't turn out like that. While I was thinking that, the other 3 sat down as well. Except for Kagaya, who was floating in midair. Alright, everyone knows the plan, right? From now on you will be known as the 10 Kings and you will judge the sinners. The moment I finished speaking, Shiryu raised his hand. Do we also have to go around killing sinners like you do, Master? How could you ever finish that? I tried it and trust me, it's not a job for a person. Couldn't he tell by how ragged I looked after 50 years of relentless labor? To pull that off, you'd need to create something like Kusanada to automate the process. Honestly, I shook my head and took the law code of the 10 Kings from Kagaya, setting it down in front of the 4 candidates. The moment it hit the ground, a heavy thud echoed. F***ck, look at that thickness. According to the contents written here in Jaman's law code of the 10 Kings, you will send the sinners to their respective hells. For example, those who stood by and watched people in danger go to the hell of the Forest of Swords. Those who committed murder or robbery go to the hell of poisonous snakes. Got it? Looking at their faces, all 3 of them were darting their eyes back and forth between Jaman and the law code with expressions of pure disgust. Jaman wrote this code? Tsunishiro wrote a law? You want us to use a law book made by a bastard who always does whatever the hell he wants. Wow. Jaman, how is your reputation so bad even with people you've lived with for 1,000 years? Actually, considering it's Jaman, it makes sense. Don't worry. I figured you'd say that, so I had Kagaya help him. At that, the 3 of them minus Jaman glanced at Kagaya and immediately nodded in agreement. Well, he does look the part of someone trustworthy. Feeling a strange sense of pride, I was smiling happily when Myron timidly raised her hand. Why did this kid become so shy after getting younger? Yes, what is it? So are you saying we have to memorize all of this? This entire thick book? Myron, pale as a sheet, asked with a trembling voice. Ah, right. Despite her looks, she always hated studying. Looking at them like this, it's nice that they're all so consistent, even after all this time. I chuckled, rubbed my nose, and gave a kind explanation. Why do you think I called it the 10 Kings? 10 Kings. 10 judges. You only need to memorize the parts you're in charge of. Don't be scared by the thickness, just remember your sector and study that part until you know it by heart. Right? I looked over at Kagaya, but he just smiled gently and shook his head. That single book is the law code for just 1 level of hell. Oh, F***ck. We cannot allow for any innocent soul to be wrongly judged after all. Well, that's true. I nodded at Kagaya's logic. Apparently that's how it is. Ugh, I don't particularly feel sorry for them. Even if it's miserable, just grit your teeth and endure it. You didn't choose this, but you sure as hell caused it. I have one question. Look at this brat, the only one not raising her hand. Yes, what is it, my smart aleck little rebel? You said there are 10 kings, so why are there only 4 of us? She has no manners, but that's a good question, so I'll answer. Everyone, listen closely, this is serious. When I put on a serious face, the 4 of them, minus Kagaya, listened intently. Kagaya looked like he knew exactly what I was up to and gave a bittersweet smile. I caught his eye and gave him a look, so he tactfully backed away. I took a deep breath, placed my hands on Jaman and Shiryu's shoulders and looked between them. I'm giving you the power to appoint the rest. Figure it out yourselves. I'm going to sleep. Before they could process what they had just heard, I blurted out the rest of the terms at lightning speed. By the way, these are term-based positions. Each term is 10,000 years. If you find a successor, you can hand it off. If not, you serve another term. Oh, and just so you know, if you hand the position off to some incompetent idiot just because you want to rest and hell goes to **T, I'll increase your terms to 100,000 years and fold your spines in half. Understood? Good luck, *tap, I slapped their shoulders and vanished from the spot at the speed of light before they could snap out of it. Phew. Finally, some rest. If I worked hard for over 1,000 years, I've earned the right to rest, right? You say no? Too bad, I'm resting anyway. Let's just take a nap for now. My first sleep in 50 years was on a hard stone floor with a stone pillow so high it felt like it would break my neck, but it was still incredibly sweet. Just as my eyes were closing, a bright light pierced through my eyelids and slammed into my vision. Now what? You must finish what you started. I did everything. The hell of the Mountain of Needles and the hell of the Forest of Swords have no blades or swords. We also lack saws for the hell of sawing, and the hell of the iron bed lacks iron mortars and platforms. Can't I just do it after a little nap? Wouldn't it be better to rest with a light heart after finishing everything, rather than resting while being chased by chores? Damn it. He's so right, I can't even argue. I let out a long sigh and stood up, scratching my head aggressively. If I fix those, it's really over, right? Kagaya only smiled back brilliantly. Arg. He always stops talking exactly when it's inconvenient for him. Chapter 54. The Swordsmith. I thought I could rest. I truly believed that once I finished this, I'd finally be able to take a break. That there was only a little bit left to go, but I was wrong. It wasn't over yet. It's that same feeling of hollow frustration and anger you get when you've been studying your heart out and just as you're about to relax, someone bursts through the door and shouts, "Are you playing games again?" I'm pissed, but I can't even blow off steam, since I'm the one who told them, clean up your own shit. Back in the day, getting angry now would just make me a hypocrite with a double standard, and I refuse to look like that. If I do, I'll lose the moral high ground to rag on those brats of disciples I have. I let out a sigh that felt like it could sink the floor and rubbed my weary face. Swords. Swords. I definitely won't find any in hell. Hell doesn't have iron. I mean, for fuck's sake, it has everything else. Why is iron the one thing missing? Handing over a piece of trash land with zero resources like iron or copper. Jaman, you absolute bastard. The more I think about it, the madder I get. I'm going to give him so much shit when I get back. With that thought, I picked up a piece of obsidian from the ground and crushed it. It looked incredibly sharp. If I just attached a handle, I could probably use it like a knife. For a split second, I considered just mass-producing these obsidian blades and calling it a day. But then I remembered how much I had chewed out my disciples for doing things in a half-assed makeshift way, so I abandoned the idea. Phew. Fine. I'll just close my eyes, finish this one job properly, and then I'm resting. I tore through the boundary and stepped into the soul society. I didn't even look toward the world of the living. Humans are still in their primitive unga-bunga phase down there. There's nothing for me to find. Wait, does that mean Kagaya was out there preaching to cavemen? Could they even understand him? Lost in thought, I wandered aimlessly. Plenty of soul reapers and souls were passing by, but none of them bumped into me. That if I couldn't manage that much, I would have stayed dead a long time ago. Eventually, I arrived at the main gate of the Shiba estate. Ah. Since I always get what I need here, my subconscious must have guided me back. I scratched my head and was about to turn back when a spark of an idea hit me. Usually, every great noble house has at least one swordsmith. TSK. No, that's not right. It's not my family. Even if Shiryu was happy to help, being a parasite to his descendants is crossing a line. It would be different if I could pay them back somehow, but the only reward I can offer is a bit of preferential treatment after they die. Forget it. I let out a deep sigh and turned my back. I couldn't just walk forever. So I expanded my spiritual senses to find a place where a swordsmith or a blacksmith might be located. I focused on isolated areas where not many people lived. However, despite my search, all I found were blacksmiths making farm tools or wood-cutting axes. I couldn't find a single swordsmith. To be precise, they'd welcome me as a customer at first, but the moment I mentioned forging a sword or a blade, they'd freak out and refuse me flat out. It was as if the very concept was taboo. They reacted with horror, as if they'd heard something forbidden, and hurried to see me out. I was certain something was wrong when I saw one of them throwing salt behind me as I left. Whatever happened, it must have been a major disaster. Fuck sake, at least LL me why? Unable to contain my frustration, I decided to demand an answer from the next forge I entered. Inside the 7th forge, I found an old blacksmith with hair as white as frost, smoking a long pipe. Good. A veteran like him should know something. Excuse me. I have something to ask. The old man turned around with a look that said, "Where did this disrespectful brat come from?" But after blinking a few times and really looking at me, he suddenly scrambled to his feet in a panic and performed a deep formal bow. Oh my. What brings a great noble lord to such a humble place as this? Are you kidding me? Is this guy cut from the same cloth as Shiryu? Seeing an elder kneeling before me made me uncomfortable, so I immediately hauled the old smith back to his feet. I might actually be older than him, but it's still unpleasant to see an old man with bad knees groveling like that. Yeah, that's enough. Drop the formalities and just sit down. I don't like that stuff. Yes. I understand. Still processing the situation, the old man sat down while nervously glancing at me. I leaned my back against the wall. It's nothing major. I just want to ask a question. If it is something I know, I will answer anything. I'm in need of some swords and blades. But every blacksmith I've met today freaks out and tells me no the second I mention it. If someone would just give me a reason, I'd understand, but they just kick me out without a word. It's frustrating. Do you perhaps not know of that incident? I asked because I don't know. The old smith glanced around warily, let out a pained groan and sighed deeply before starting his story. It was 50 years. Yes, a bit more than 50 years ago. A man who called himself a samurai asked for a sword to be forged. A blacksmith's duty is to strike iron. Naturally, the smith forged the blade, but a specific figure suddenly flashed through my mind at the old man's description, the self-proclaimed samurai who fell to hell. One of the sinners who's had his head bashed in the most over the last 50 years. Let me guess. The moment he got the sword, he went on a mindless killing spree. Yes. First, he slaughtered the swordsmith who made the blade. Then he went out into the streets and butchered everyone in sight. Because of what happened then, blacksmiths who aren't part of a noble house, they stopped making swords. That's the gist of it, huh? Yes. That's part of it, but after seeing that samurai get dragged down to hell, we feared that the blacksmith who made the sword might have been dragged down as well. We worry that if such a thing happens again, we too will be caught up in it and fall into hell. Oh, for fuck's sake, that samurai bastard. He really is useless in every way. His reasoning wasn't illogical, so I let out a long sigh and scratched my head. Do I really have to swallow my pride and go beg a swordsmith from the Shiba, Shihoin, Kuchiki, or Tsunyashiro clans? As I sat there brooding with a scowl, the old smith spoke up hesitantly. If you absolutely must have a sword, there is one very peculiar fellow. There is one? Is he skilled? Yes. Without a doubt, his skill is exceptional. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the greatest in the Soul Society. Then that's fine. What's the problem? Well, he's a very peculiar lad. I hesitated to even mention him. It's not for personal use, I just need it for decoration. I don't care how weird he is. If he exists, I want to meet him. Tell me where he is. The old man groaned as if in genuine conflict, looking at me nervously before finally letting out a small sigh. If you keep heading west from here, you'll find a cliff that people usually avoid. There's a brat there who spends his time forging swords. What kind of person is he? It's hard to put into words. However, he won't make anything for someone who doesn't meet his standards. Even if you find him, whether he'll actually forge a blade for you is. What kind of standards? Requirements for ability? Money? There must be something. If it were as simple as that, I wouldn't have hesitated. That boy, I think I get the vibe. Right. Thanks for the tip. I didn't need the full explanation, I could already guess the type. I waved a hand and stepped outside. Anywhere else would be a waste of time, so I ignored everything else and headed west as instructed. This must be the place. Eventually, a dilapidated hut with smoke rising from it appeared in the distance. At a glance, it looked like an abandoned shack on the verge of collapse, but the sounds and the heat radiating from within signaled that someone was working inside. Clang. Clang. Even if I hadn't seen the smoke, the intense, ear-piercing ringing of metal was presence enough. Looks like he's hard at work. I grinned with satisfaction and strode toward the hut. The heat had been palpable from afar, but as I stood before the door, a wave of heat rivaling hell itself washed over me. Most people wouldn't even be able to step over the threshold. Is this why they called him peculiar? I smirked and entered. Inside, I saw a man swinging a hammer with intense focus. He sensed someone coming in and glanced my way for a moment, but he didn't stop his hands. I have plenty of time, so I might as well enjoy the show. Knowing that craftsmen hate being interrupted, I found a corner and sat down to watch intently. It was a repetitive, simple process, putting the iron into the furnace and striking the glowing metal with a hammer. Yet, with just a few strikes, the iron's form shifted and its shape was carved out. His skill is truly something. I don't know the first thing about smithing, but I know how difficult it is to change the shape of iron so freely with just a hammer. It was entirely different from when I used brute force to crush or warp things into shape. Strike after strike, heating and hammering. After repeating the process, the man ground the cooled steel, applied clay, heated it again, and finally plunged it into a water vat. Kiss. When the boiling sound ceased and he pulled the steel from the water, a masterpiece that could only be called a sword revealed its form. A blade that was perfectly straight without a single curve, an edge that glinted sharply in the light of the furnace, and a Hammond pattern that looked like rolling waves. Even as an amateur, I could tell it was a masterfully crafted katana. However, after examining it from several angles, the man let out a heavy sigh and placed it back on the anvil. Failed again, Mon. With those words, he brought his hammer down and snapped the sword in two. What is with this guy's speech pattern? Chapter 55, God of the Sword. For a moment, his way of speaking was so bizarre I thought he was speaking English, but as I kept listening I realized it wasn't English at all.
Look, if you've actually made it this far into the video and you're still here, come on then, hit subscribe. And honestly, if you think a friend of yours would like this, go on and share it with them. It really helps out. Right, I'm done. I'll get out of your hair now so you can get back to the good stuff. But seriously, stick around till the end. It's well worth it.
He was just stretching out the ends of his sentences and twisting his pronunciation so strangely that it merely sounded like English that I was startled for a second, thinking he was using English in an era where even cuneiform hadn't appeared in the human realm yet. Calming my racing heart, I picked up a broken blade and examined it from different angles. To an amateur like me, no matter how much I looked at it, it just looked like a well-crafted katana. It looks well made. Why are you breaking it? Oh? Who? I've been watching you from behind for a while now. I guess you didn't notice. Sorry for startling you. You've been in here while I was working go? It definitely wasn't English, but the way it sounded like it made it incredibly awkward. Wait a minute. I feel like there was one guy who spoke exactly like this. Ah, right, there was one. The man who created the Zanpakuto, the divine general of the West. The man who fueled the Zero Division is a fraud theories with his infamous quote, "Sorry, I'm strong." An unfortunate member of the Royal Guard whose reputation was only restored after the Thousand-Year Blood War anime revealed that his previous portrayal was just a victim of Kubo's narrative choices. Nimeha Otsu. What? How do you know my name? Nimeha exaggerated his shock like an actor, scuttling backward. Though his actions seemed unnecessarily theatrical, the vigilance reflecting in his eyes was anything but ordinary. Seeing that look in his eyes, one that suggested he would cut me down the instant things went south, I waved my hands dismissively. Hey, don't worry about it. I just found out about you while looking for a skilled swordsmith. So why don't you lower that sword you've got hidden behind your back? I can't believe you noticed yeah? You're quite the tough customer, man. Nimeha pursed his lips and pointed at me with his fingers shaped like a gun, thumb and index extended. Seriously, how does every single one of his movements remind me of a rapper? Let's not pay it any mind. I sighed and rubbed the bridge of my nose, realizing that worrying about his antics would only make me tired. Anyway, I'm looking for a skilled smith. I need blades, quite a lot of them. So that's why you came looking for me. I've traveled all over the Soul Society looking for blacksmiths, but they all freak out the moment I bring up swords. All this trouble because of one idiot who fell to hell. In truth, I wanted to drag that bastard by his hair out of hell, beat him into a literal pulp, and give a speech saying, "Citizens of the Soul Society, the Akuto has been dealt with in hell, so please return to your smithing without fear." But I couldn't do that. From the perspective of peaceful residents, that would be no different from some crazy person turning a stranger into a bloody mess and then telling them to feel safe. Knowing that, I didn't bother throwing a tantrum. I see. I get what you're saying. But why should I forge a sword for you? Is there something you need? I'm prepared to pay a price if there's something you want. No. He shook his head side to side and thrust an index finger in front of my face, flashing a wide, toothy grin that showed his gums. I do not hammer iron because I need money or fame. You feel me? You want to buy my blades with money? If I really wanted money, I would have become a smith for the nobles, touching thousands. No, 10,000s of gold pieces while singing hallelujah. His speech and actions were light as air, but his unshakable, determined eyes shone brilliantly even in the dark room. So this is the future member of Squad Zero. Impressive. I chuckled, stepping aside to avoid his finger and patted Nimeha on the shoulder. I said I'd pay a price, I never said I'd pay a fee. And I also said, if there's something you want. You're saying you're different from the other fools who tried to bribe me with cash? Fine. That attitude. I like it. I'll hear you out. He was saying that, but I didn't expect him to forge anything for me right away. Hearing me out was one thing, agreeing to make them was another. That Jaman bastard used to play word games like that too. I let out a quiet sigh and took a seat in a convenient spot. Eh? Not looking for a chair? Usually the high and mighty nobles start complaining, asking where the chairs are, why there's nowhere to sit, where the tea is, and all that. I won't die without a chair. You sit too. It's uncomfortable to talk with just me sitting. My neck hurts from looking up at you. I like how easygoing you are compared to the other lords. I like you even more now. Nimeha, who had been looking down at me, grinned and sat across from me. He began tapping his palm with his hammer as he spoke. An axe cuts wood, a hammer drives nails, a chisel carves timber, and a plow tills the field. But a sword is different. It can be used to slay or it can be used to save. Thump. You, for what reason are you asking me to forge a blade? What is the purpose of that sword? Is it a sword to kill? A sword to save? Or perhaps just for your own pleasure? Just so you know. If you can't answer, if you hesitate, or if your answer doesn't satisfy me, I will not forge a single blade. Kill me if you want. I might not look it, but I'm pretty good with a sword. I am a swordsmith after all. I'm not asking you to make them for my own use though. Ha! Nimeha screamed, pointing his hammer toward me as if he hadn't expected that response at all. Then why did you come looking for me? That's weird. You want a sword forged even though you don't need one? If you were trying to surprise me, you did such a good job. I want to praise you. Did I hear that right? Huh? It's exactly as I said. I'm not asking you to make them for me to use. Then where the hell are you gonna use them? Hell. Ha? This time he seemed truly shocked. He dropped his hammer, his jaw hanging open. Hell? Heal? You're joking, right? This is a joke? Just saying it for a laugh? I'm serious. Wanna see for yourself. As I struck the air and cracked the space open, the agonizing screams and shrieks began to leak through the crevice, as if some parts of hell were already in operation. The screams echoed through the small hut and down the cliff, making Nimeha turn pale. Though his skin was dark, it was still noticeable. The hells of the 10 kings. Destined locations for sinners based on the crimes they committed in life. The problem is, I don't have the tools for the hell of blades, the hell of the forest of swords, the hell of boiling water, the hell of sawing, or the hell of the iron bed. Iron cauldrons for the hell of boiling water, iron mortars or iron-studded beds for the hell of the iron bed, or saws for the hell of sawing. I could just ask other blacksmiths for those. But for the swords and blades needed for the hell of blades, and the hell of the forest of swords, I don't have anyone who can make them. As I spoke, I held up the broken blade fragment I had picked up earlier. Actually, even receiving broken shards like this would be enough. The goal is to make the sinners atone after all. To inflict pain then. How grim, man. You want to use my blades for that? To have them stuck in one place like ornaments, never finding a master, never being used as intended, existing only to cause pain to others? What kind of nonsense is that? It is grim. If it sounds unpleasant, you could phrase it as returning their karma. Well, if you still don't like it, there's nothing I can do. I shrugged and let out a deep sigh. However, Nimeha's expression didn't change. He still looked repulsed. That's a shame. Can't be helped. I was thinking of inscribing your name in hell, but what a waste. Since you would have made the swords and blades to uphold the laws of hell, I was going to call you the God of the Sword. God of War, Tushin. Isn't that a bit too grandiose a title for a blacksmith? No, God of the Sword, Dashin. Using the character for sword. Oh, I chuckled as I saw him look slightly disappointed yet strangely restless, clearing his throat while peeking at my reaction. Right, if I recall, in the original story, he was a guy who loved flashy and eye-catching things. I should have led with this from the start. I see you're getting interested now. What do you think? Your name engraved in hell not as a sinner, but as the one who punishes them. And with the title of a god to boot. The sword god Nimeha Otsu. Ugh. Kruig. It's definitely a good offer, man. But I'm gonna have to refuse. That was unexpected. I thought he'd take the bait immediately. Then again, if everything in the world went that easily, everyone would be living happily ever after with a smile. May I ask why? Because I haven't made a sword that meets my standards yet. A sword with a soul. Yes, a sword with a heart. I haven't been able to make one. Therefore, I'll pretend I never heard that request. The title of sword god is tempting, but my goal comes first. I told you it's not god of war, it's god of the sword. The pronunciation is similar enough, it's fine. Either way, the offer is off the table. I actually liked how he laughed and brushed off his lingering attachment, saying, "It's a shame, but can't be helped." Haha. He was easygoing yet bold, honest with his own heart, and held nothing back. He was exactly the kind of person I'd want as a friend. A sword with a soul, huh? Oh? Do you happen to know something about that? I have some knowledge. Zanpakuto, its form and abilities are born from the soul of the Soul Reaper themselves. I don't remember where that quote came from, but I recall it because it used to appear every single time before the anime's opening sequence. The part to think about here is that the form and abilities are born from the Soul Reaper. It's not the blacksmith who makes the sword, it's the job of the Soul Reaper who holds it. Putting a soul into a blade is not the blacksmith's job. It's the job of the one who wields it. What? Is a sickle a murder weapon meant to cut a man's throat, or a tool meant to harvest crops? Is an axe a tool to chop wood or a weapon to kill people? That depends on who's using it and how. Wait, when a baby is born, can you call that infant a grown adult? No. Only after they are raised with love, cared for, and guided down the right path until they can stand on their own as a person can you call them an adult. What the blacksmith does is akin to a doctor ensuring the child is born smoothly. Whether that child grows up to be a certain kind of adult is determined by their parents, or by themselves. I see. I see. So that's how it is. Ha 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 ha. Nimeha suddenly leapt up, grabbed his hammer and tongs and stood before the fire. Hey you. What's your name? Well, I don't really have a name. Nameless. That's not bad either. Because as you just told me, I just have to start making it from now on. Ha ha. Right, I'm a blacksmith. A swordsmith. My job is to make. Spinning around, Nimeha stared straight at me with eyes that shone much more brilliantly than before. That offer you mentioned a moment ago, is it still on the table? Yeah. I haven't withdrawn it yet. He, good. Very good. I'll take that job. I, the sword god Dashin, Nimeha Otsu. Then I'm counting on you. Oh. Nimeha gave a hearty shout and began passionately pounding his hammer. As if responding to that passion, the hammer and tongs in his hands began to glow. Of course, whether that light came from the flames of the forge, or something else entirely, well, I suppose only the man himself would know. Chapter 56, The Vicious Cycle bonus. After placing an order for blades with Nimeha and requesting iron nails, plates, mortars, and cauldrons from the other blacksmiths, I delivered all the supplies to Hell before returning to the hut. It had been 4 weeks. Roughly a month had passed, and if you're wondering why I returned to the hut instead of staying in Hell for the past month, it's because if I'm not here, there's no one to deliver the swords Nimeha finishes. It's definitely not because I'm afraid Kagaya will catch me and dump a mountain of chores on my head the moment I step foot in Hell. That is absolutely not why I'm hunkering down here. I'm telling you it's not. F***ck off. Leave me alone. I'm back. Dow. I'm sleeping. Dow. Clang. Clang. The rhythmic metallic ringing struck my eardrums repeatedly, but it couldn't interfere with my sweet slumber. The sound of Nimeha pounding steel and the blistering heat radiating from the forge were nothing to me. Sure, it was a bit annoying, but compared to the agonizing screams of sinners and the suffocating heat of boiling magma, this was child's play. It was practically background noise, and so I drifted off to the steady tempo of the hammer, using it as a lullaby. My first sleep in 50 years. God, it felt F***king amazing. Even though there was no bed or pillow and nothing but a cold wall to lean my head against, it was enough. I was grateful for every second of it. Just as I was slipping into that blissful state of semi-consciousness with a satisfied smile, Nimeha's voice jolted me awake. 1 blade complete. OU. Now, how many was that? About 34. Ever since I gave him the title God of the Sword, his processing speed has reached a level that defies common sense. What's even more surprising is the quality. Every time I inspect a blade, I'm genuinely impressed. If I'd known he'd be this efficient, I shouldn't have called him the God of the Sword. I should have gone with something like the God of Metallurgy or the God of the Forge. Maybe then he'd be pumping out 3 blades a day. Yen. S. Mac. Damn, you're fast. Hand it over. With a bizarre key eye of 2, he tossed the katana. I caught it midair and threw it straight into the hell of blades, far below, the sound of steel-piercing flesh echoed through the dimensional rift, thwack, followed by a pained scream. Some unlucky sinner had just been skewered by a fresh delivery. They're sounding lively today too, hey-oh. They can't hear you anyway. It's total pandemonium down there. Ha-ha. It is hell after all. It fits the vibe, you. Perhaps because we'd spent nearly a month together, we'd reached the point of exchanging trivial banter. Of course, considering the topics of our jokes were usually hell, sinners, and agonizing screams, both he and I are definitely a few screws loose. Well, it's a bit late to be surprised by that. I let out a dry chuckle, leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes again. Master. Ugh, f***ck, seriously? Do I have to see your face in my dreams now too? I'm sick of it. I wanted you to achieve enlightenment and be happy, but I didn't intend for you to become a brat who exploits your master. Master. Can you hear my voice? Who do you think you are, the firekeeper from Dark Souls? What now? I dug my pinky into my ear and cracked one eye open. What is it? I believe you need to come to hell for a moment. Holy sh**t, he really was talking to me. I blinked in surprise for a second, but then the realization that something else had gone wrong hit me. My motivation evaporated instantly. Arg. Ah. I don't want to work. Ha ha ha. If you can't avoid it, enjoy it, big brother. Besides, you've been sleeping this whole time. What's with the sudden hard work complaints? Something happened in hell. I have to go check it out. Just stack the blades next to me as you finish them. I'll be back soon to pick them up. Ow. Understood, you. I told you to stop dragging out your sentences like that. Either do it right or don't do it at all. Eh? What's wrong with my speech? It adds rhythm, you. What rhythm? Who does he think he is, Michael Jackson? Actually, if I look at him for 0.1 seconds, he does kind of look like Michael Jackson. But since Nimeha was born first in this world, I guess Michael Jackson is a 0.1 second Nimeha. Anyway, I'll handle the mess in hell and then we'll talk. I'll teach you some proper English then. English? Don't worry about it. I'm going. Keep it up. Leaving him with those brief instructions, I tore through the boundaries and returned to hell. The hell I returned to looked surprisingly normal at first glance. Even though the hell of blades and the hell of the forest of swords were incomplete, the sinners were still receiving punishments based on their crimes, and the first 4 of the 10 kings were doing their jobs well. This was all achieved in just 1 month. Their efficiency was commendable, but a rush-it-out mentality always breeds unforeseen problems, just like what I was seeing right now. What the f***ck is this? Sinners were killing other sinners. Is it fratricide? No, it wasn't that. These bastards were punishing other sinners with their own hands. A sinner punishing another sinner? What the hell kind of logic is that? If they were trying to be some kind of dark hero, I wouldn't even be complaining. These guys were beating other sinners to death while sincerely believing that doing so would somehow reduce their own negative karma. This is just seriously. Hey, Kagaya. Where are you? I have been beside you since you arrived. Explain this. What exactly is going on? It is a manpower shortage. Kagaya's answer was somewhat expected. I had to work literally all day without sleep just to keep the executions going, so there was no way these people, who didn't have even a fraction of my physical power, could maintain that grueling schedule. And this was the result. Hell had morphed into a bizarre state where the sinners themselves acted as the punishers. I should have resolved this first. After telling everyone not to work by winging it, I ended up being the one winging it the most. Regret always comes too late, and right now all I could do was sigh. Sure, if I had prepared in advance, would it have happened? Probably. Thinking about it made my blood boil. I've been working like a dog for 50 years without even sleeping, unable to prepare anything because I was drowning in labor, so why the f***ck is this my problem to solve now? It is my problem, but it's still infuriating. I feel so incredibly shafted right now. Ha, fine. What can I do? We are short-handed. My anger flared up like a boiling pot of noodles and then simmered down just as quickly. I had to stay calm. The 50 years of fatigue hadn't fully drained yet, making me more irritable than usual that I couldn't exactly kill the morale of the people working hard just because I was annoyed. Of course, by working hard, I don't mean these bastards over here pulling other sinners by their hair and whipping them. Those guys should be on the receiving end too. They aren't working, they're committing a dereliction of duty. Explain those guys first. You must have had criteria for choosing them. They were selected as hell wardens through an extremely rigorous screening of model sinners. First, the weight of their sins was measured, and then those who feel guilt and pain, not pleasure, when harming others were recruited, or so I was told. Kagaya, as he spoke, made a sour face for the first time since he'd descended to hell. Seeing a man who had shed all 5 desires and 7 emotions, one who had reached enlightenment, make a face like that, it told me exactly how things were going. I gave a small smirk and tapped Kagaya on the shoulder with the back of my hand. Hey, even you think this is ridiculous, right? Using evil to fight evil. It is nothing more than self-cannibalization. There's that, but if we leave them like this, it'll be a disaster. No matter how extreme a stimulus is, if it's repeated, it becomes a routine. And once a stimulus becomes mundane, humans look for even greater stimulation. That is the nature of the human brain. Eventually, there will be those who torment their victims far more than the sentence dictates. If they're a different gender, well, you can imagine the rest. There's an old saying, if you run, you want to walk, if you walk, you want to stop, if you stop, you want to sit, and eventually you want to lie down. That's the human heart. The thing we have to fear here is routinization. Take the slaughtering industry, for example. Specifically the slaughter part, not the processing. At first, the stench of blood is so nauseating you can't even go near the facility. But once you get a little used to it, you can step inside. However, the moment you witness what's inside, well, I'll leave that to your imagination. In any case, once even those horrific sights become part of the daily routine, they are no longer viewed as stimuli. It just becomes a boring daily routine. There will definitely be those dissatisfied with the current situation, and if this pain becomes a routine, they'll eventually band together, form hierarchies, and generally act like a bunch of F***ck-ups. I didn't create the 10 Kings Hell just to watch that though happen. Those who deserve punishment should receive the punishment they deserve, while simultaneously shedding their karma. That was the purpose I intended when I designed this system, but look at this mess. Gwa. Why? Why just you? Why just you? Die. Die. Just F***king die. Those who should be suffering and writhing in guilt were instead screaming in malice, cursing and resenting the sinner wardens, drifting further away from salvation. Meanwhile, the wardens were accumulating even more negative karma by beating other sinners to death, rather than atoning for their own. It's a vicious cycle. In the end, managing sinners must be done by flawless beings. Flawless yet indifferent entities that aren't swayed by the appearance or words of a sinner. How many trials have been completed so far? The trials for those already in hell are finished. That is why the 4 of them are currently meeting to devise a countermeasure. Guess I need to go where they are first. Do you have a good plan? I have one thing in mind. The Kushinada, maybe not quite as ridiculously massive as the ones in the stories, I'll keep them more compact, though the ones who'll be doing the actual work of creating them are those 4, not me. Chapter 57. A hell befitting hell. Once the trials were over, I gathered the 4 idiots who were busy memorizing the law code in one place. This time I didn't call the newly appointed 10 kings. I only summoned the 4 founders who had helped shape the laws governing the world. The 4 of them gathered, wearing expressions that clearly asked why I was calling them when they were already swamped with work. Even Shiryu, who usually maintained his composure, shared that same look with the other 3. Of course, they weren't busy judging sinners. They were busy memorizing that massive law code. It is a bit thick after all. The reason I called you today isn't anything grand. I want to increase the manpower in hell. Initially, I wanted to scold them for using sinners as jailers, but considering they were likely doing their best with what they had, I couldn't bring myself to chew them out. Just how short-handed were they that they had to borrow the hands of the damned? I'd honestly prefer the help of a cat. Increase manpower? Are you serious? The moment I mentioned manpower, Myron's face lit up, and she let out a cheer. For the usually negative crybaby Myron to be this happy. Just how grueling is the workload? Poor bastard. Which sector of hell are you in charge of again? The hell of sawing. I mean, it is my jurisdiction, sir. The hell of sawing is the sector that deals with financial crimes, particularly commercial disputes. Since it focuses on fraud, the sinners there constantly try to scam even the 10 kings, leading to a massive headache for the judge. That I can see why she's exhausted. But I have a solution for that, so there's no problem. Okay. I have a plan for that, so don't worry. We'll have it sorted soon. Really? Yes. Just how hard has she been pushed to break like this? I watched Myron laughing like a loon, wahahaha. Hee hee. And just shook my head. Anyway, back to the manpower issue. First, we're going to create the Hell Wardens. Hell Wardens? I believe the current system is sufficient for the time being. Jaman countered, his expression full of doubt. To be fair, Jaman isn't entirely wrong. The number of sinners in hell barely exceeds 1,000 right now. In fact, Kagaya mentioned that several had recently been reincarnated through the 6 realms into lesser creatures like birds and insects, so there are actually fewer than 1,000 in places like the 8 cold hells where there are very few true sinners, or the unfinished mountain of needles and forest of swords, there are barely a dozen sinners at most. The hell of poisonous snakes, which handles violent crimes, is a different story. There are quite a few there, but regardless, there wasn't an immediate, desperate need for change. But it's easier if we prepare and change things in advance. What happens when we just push things off saying, oh, we'll fix it later? That is, humans kept reincarnating only as humans, spiritual power kept building up in the blood vessels of the world like cholesterol, and it became a mess, right? Because of that, even the innocent Hosuki ended up falling into hell. Am I right or wrong? The 4 of them had no rebuttal. They just let out pained groans and avoided eye contact. I didn't intend to grill them, but here I am doing it again. I let out a long sigh, sat down, and began drawing on the ground. The first problem is solving the abnormal structure where sinners only accumulate karma instead of purging it. This isn't something that can wait, it must be changed immediately. That's why I want to increase the staff. However, no matter who does the deed, they will still accumulate the karma of killing. Which is why we need a being that possesses no karma. How could such a thing possibly exist? The Kushinada. I described the beings I remembered, beings that were effectively the manifested energy of hell itself, the true hell wardens. Deity first. The 4 of them thought it sounded plausible, but as I continued, their expressions grew grim. So, you mean to create beings that will never reincarnate, but will slaughter sinners in hell for all eternity? If you're talking about their raison d'être, then yes. I wasn't trying to create Buddhas. As Myron described, I intended to create machines, immortal, non-reincarnating engines of death that would endlessly execute sinners in hell. They must have no thoughts. They must have no heart. They must be nothing more than things created solely to punish and kill the wicked. What exactly are you trying to build? Having heard the general explanation, all 4 looked at me in horror. Myron was the first to cry out in terror. Even Jaman, who had sacrificed tens of thousands for the Ukin, was staring at me with a look of shock. It made me realize just how terrifying my plan sounded. Of course, I knew it would sound that way to those who didn't understand the inner workings, so I quietly listened to their objections. This is just creating a scapegoat to bear the weight of karma. It's a preposterous theory. I'm not one to talk, but that plan sounds like something only a madman would conceive. Master, this is no different from offering an innocent child as a living sacrifice for the sake of a village. You surely know this, so why would you? I listened to them and nodded slowly. I understood their concerns. Let's get one premise straight. They are not living things. They are inanimate. Pardon? Does a landslide have a heart? Does a typhoon have thoughts? Does a tsunami feel pity? No, they don't. That is what I want to create. Something like a natural disaster that judges the sinners. A heartless, mindless, pitiless, inanimate object. Karma is ultimately something that accumulates on the entity of the self. What defines that self? To me, it is thoughts and a heart. You know the saying, I think therefore I am. Something like that. That is why I want to create something without a heart or thoughts. Think of it simply as creating a keto spell. Hell is overflowing with spiritual power, so we don't have to worry about maintenance costs. Sinners won't accumulate extra karma because of the executioners. It's nothing but benefits. But still, it feels dehumanizing. It's not like I'm killing everyone who comes to hell. Only the sinners. And only those whose sentences are finalized. If they wanted to feel pity for the Kushinada, I had nothing left to say. I shrugged and drew on the ground again. Since they shouldn't look human, let's give them monstrous forms. Skeleton faces. And they shouldn't be too small, so make them larger than a man, but not overwhelmingly huge. The sketches I produced showed massive humanoid figures with animal heads instead of human ones. Feeling something was missing, I added more details that I drew several varieties, from something resembling a Wendigo to Gozu, ox head, and Mezu, horse face, and even one twisted into the shape of a Baphomet. Well, except for the Wendigo, they all technically belong in hell, so it doesn't matter. Which of these looks best? Let's exclude the ones with wings for now. They won't be flying in the sky, so adding wings would just be a waste of spiritual power. True enough. By adding this and subtracting that, we eventually coordinated our views. The primary hell wardens were decided as Gozu and Mezu. Right, now you just need to build them as we discussed. I gave them the idea, now it was their job to execute it. When I said that, their faces twisted into spectacular grimaces. What? We have to make them? Of course. I don't know how to build stuff. Forget making new keto, I don't even know how to handle spiritual power. You can learn starting now. Maybe I misspoke. I have no spiritual power. I smirked, shrugged, and turned my back on them that I could feel their glares burning holes into the back of my head, probably cursing me out, but I ignored them and walked away. Don't call me irresponsible. This wasn't even my job to begin with, but I couldn't stand seeing the world the Soul King left behind turning into a total shitshow. Considering the state hell was in the original story, I've already done more than enough. Anyway, the reason I dumped that work on the 4 of them wasn't just because I wanted to slack off. I have something else to do. I let out a sigh and went to find Kagaya. He was with Hosuki. It had been a while since I'd seen Hosuki, and many things had changed. First and foremost, the way he looked at sinners was different. It was no longer an eye filled with a desperate, reckless urge to save them. He wasn't seeking to save people anymore. He was seeking an answer. That was the look on his face. Why is the world filled with such suffering? Why must all sentient beings suffer? Because they cling to the self. What is this self? There is no self. There is an I, but that I is not me. It sounded like the conversation was getting too heavy, so I quietly backed away. I'm no philosopher. I only have a shallow, surface-level understanding of such things. I hate these Zen riddles that just give me a headache. I exhaled and waited patiently nearby for the two to finish their discussion. After waiting a while, I felt someone approaching. I opened my eyes to see Hosuki looking at me. What? You haven't moved an inch this whole time. Are you finally ready to reincarnate? Yes. Looking at him, his spiritual power was significantly dissipated. Sitting in one spot without eating, drinking, or sleeping, surviving on pure spiritual power alone, he had clearly consumed quite a lot of it. Well, this much should be fine for reincarnation. I called over the 4 who were working hard and asked about the 6 realms of reincarnation. At the edge of the hell of black darkness lies the path to the 6 realms. Once you start walking down one of those paths, your body gradually disperses until you are reincarnated as a being of that realm. So basically, you just open the door and walk in. Something we spent 100 years building, and you summarize it in one sentence. Rizatsu looked a bit heartbroken by my summary, but that wasn't important. I took Hosuki to the edge of the hell of black darkness. I hadn't been here since I created hell, and to my surprise, there was a void-like space with 6 distinct paths branch out. So, what do you want to be reincarnated as? A human? I asked, remembering our old promise, and Hosuki answered without a moment's hesitation. That it was surprising, yet not entirely unexpected, so I just shrugged. With your merit, you could have gone to the heavenly realm. Why? To find the answer. Hosuki said that and began to walk forward with long, steady strides. Damn, kid's got no hesitation at all. Hey! You're not even going to say goodbye to Shiryu? I shouted, but Hosuki simply gave a faint, enigmatic smile, turned his back and kept walking. Just before he vanished, the faint halo that shimmered behind him couldn't have been my imagination. Hey, what the hell did you say to him to make him reach enlightenment and attain nirvana so fast? There is no such thing as nirvana. What are you talking about? I frowned and asked back, but Kagaya just offered a peaceful smile and said nothing more. Good grief, whatever, damn it. Hey, forget it. Just help me build the mirror of karma. Yes. As you wish. With that thought, I worked with Kagaya to create the mirror of karma, also known later as the pure spirit mirror, the Johari. There was no grand reason for it, I just thought having evidence for the trials would make things a lot easier. With this, hell will finally be somewhat stable. I distributed the mirrors to each of the 10 courts. In the original tales. Only King Yama in the hell of tongue-pulling possesses the Johari, but since I'd made them I handed them out for everyone to use, slowly but surely, hell began to take the shape of the place I knew. The systems of hell and the three worlds were beginning to find their balance. Of course, there were still many hiccups, but those were things that had to be exceeded by trial and error. There was no other way. A truly vast amount of time passed after that. As the systems of hell became more sophisticated and the flow of the three worlds stabilized, hell became hell in the truest sense of the word. Time elapsed, 100,000 years, time remaining until the original story begins, 900,000 years. Chapter 58, An outing. After a long time, it took 100,000 years to set the framework of hell and make it function without my constant intervention. But the problem was that there were still 900,000 years left before the original story began. Shall I be honest? I just wanted to close my eyes, get myself sealed somewhere, and ask someone to wake me up in 900,000 years. Human beings find a single year long enough, but 1 million years. The sheer scale of that number is King ridiculous. Still, after passing the 100,000-year mark, spans of 10 or 100 years started to feel like a joke. While that's an unfathomable amount of time for a normal human, to me it felt like no more than a day or two. That's probably proof that my sense of time has been completely shattered. I blinked blankly, let out a long yawn and smacked my lips. Maybe I worked too hard. Currently, hell is about 90% complete. First off, the 26 sectors, including the courts of the 10 kings and the combined 8 cold and 8 hot hells, are fully operational. I've even finished the Nether King Palace and the Pure Spirit Hall, so all they need now are people. The Pure Spirit Hall in particular felt like playing The Sims or Minecraft while I was building it, so I put quite a bit of effort into it. I dug waterways with pickaxes and shovels, cut and refined wood to erect wooden buildings one by one. But once I finished, putting aside the sense of pride, it looked like a total mess. The waterways I had worked so hard to create were flowing with lethal toxins from the hell trees instead of water, and the wooden buildings stood like hollow eyesores because there were no inhabitants. Of course, with Kagaya's help, the river of toxins became a real river, and the wooden structures crumbled to become fertilizer for the garden where flowers eventually bloomed. It looked more like a paradise than hell, but it felt a bit hollow. So for the Nether King Palace I built next, I just threw it together. It was barely the size of a one-room studio. Just a bit larger than the hut Nimeha lived in. Thus it was smaller than the palaces of Jaman, Shiryu, Rizatsu, Myron, and the other 10 kings. Despite the grand name of Nether King Palace, it ended up with the title of the smallest building in hell. The 10 kings would complain, saying, "How does it make sense for the Nether King's palace, the de facto master of hell, to be smaller than our halls?" And urged me to expand it. But since I live there alone, I didn't see the point and just left it as is. It's not like I care about that stuff anyway. Besides, I have to do all the cleaning myself. Making it pointlessly large would just increase my chores, and I'd have to be insane to do that to myself. Anyway, having finished all the tasks, I had nothing left to do. So what now? I do notice, I've been doing absolutely nothing. Unless someone visits, I just lie down all day and blink my eyes. To a stranger, I'd probably look like a patient with total paralysis. Of course, it's not just because I hate working or because I'm lazy. It's just that burnout finally hit me after working so hard for 100,000 years. To be perfectly honest, if you had to pick the 5 hardest working people over these last 100,000 years, I am certain I'd be on that list. Truly. You might think the busiest beings in hell would be the 10 kings who judge the sinners. Not at all. Surprisingly, the 10 kings are quite leisurely, because it's the Kusinada, not the 10 kings, who actually punish the sinners. The 10 kings are only briefly busy processing the incoming workload. If anyone is truly busy, it's the Kusinada. Then again, the Kusinada are effectively inanimate, so they probably don't even know if they're busy or not. I yawned deeply, my mind drifting through an endless sea of thoughts as I blinked my eyes open and shut. Lately, every day has been like this, lying down and doing nothing, thinking about how the world is turning, grumbling if some work actually pops up, and tending the garden at the Pure Spirit Hall. That's about it. Are you busy doing nothing again today? At the sound of the door opening, I turned my head and met the eyes of Jaman, who was entering my one-room Nether King Palace. Because it was a face I saw every day, I immediately scowled. Ugh, I'm sick of you. Shouldn't you be used to it by now? I'm past being used to it, I'm sick of it. You've lived for 100,000 years, so go get reincarnated already, kid. You and those other 3, shouldn't you be taking off your 10 kings hats after 100,000 years? Even presidents get impeached or shot after 3 or 5 terms, but what kind of crazy bastards serve 10 consecutive terms? Wait, more like 1,000. What can we do when there's no talent fit to succeed us? It's not like we can just pluck a successor from the Soul Society. You can if there's someone worth bringing over, you know? How could I have the audacity to do that? Well, I guess those 100,000 years weren't a total waste of time for him. I nodded and stood up, cracking my neck from side to side. So why are you here today? If it's to pester me about expanding the palace again, go home. I'm not doing it. Ugh, listen to my neck. That's nasty. I don't even hope for that anymore. If a 10,000-year persuasion didn't work, I should just give up. The way he sighed and shook his head was very reminiscent of Shiryu. Even a guy who didn't hesitate to murder for his own ends changes after 100,000 years. Then what is it? I've come today because a civilian complaint has been filed from the Soul Society. Wait, did I hear that right? Why are they filing a complaint with Hell? Hell isn't a community center. Why are there complaints? Seeing my puzzled expression, Jaman let out a deep sigh and continued. Technically, it's not a complaint against Hell, but one addressed directly to the Nether King. Me? Why? I haven't even gone out lately because I've been busy with the garden. It's a complaint that's been building for a long time. Well, rather than a complaint, it's more like a plea or a prayer. Here, see for yourself. Jaman held up the Johari, the mirror of karma he had brought along. The mirror reflected a scene from the Soul Society, specifically, the spot I used every time I broke the boundary of Hell to leave. There, a considerable number of people had gathered and were performing a ritual sacrifice. While I watched, wondering what was going on, several people suddenly collapsed, vomiting blood. The people nearby dragged the collapsed ones away, and the scene in the mirror fad. Edition. What was that? They say it's a ritual to purify land contaminated by the miasma of Hell. Those vomiting blood are the ones who couldn't withstand the toxins. I could see that much. What I'm curious about is why those idiots are doing that there. No one used to live in that area. You might be mistaken because people are gathered there now, but that's a craggy mountain made of nothing but rock, with such steep terrain that people rarely visited. I'm certain that back when I was coming and going for blacksmithing business, I never saw even a shadow of a person there. That was in the past. As the population in the Soul Society grew, that area became known as the Eastern Rukongai. All of it except for that specific mountain. And those guys performing the ritual are trying to use that mountain now? Yes. But the miasma of Hell is no ordinary poison. They've been performing rituals for decades, but the toxicity won't subside, and those who settle nearby keep dying. It's reached the point where people fear to even go near it, calling it Osarizen, the Mountain of Fear. Population growth. I didn't think about that. Wait a minute. Does the population really increase that rapidly? Of course, looking at how the human population exploded after industrialization, a sudden increase isn't exactly strange. But this isn't the human realm. It's the Soul Society. It's a place where souls who died in the world of the living come. A sudden spike in the Soul Society's population means that something has happened in the human realm. Did something happen in the world of the living? A devastating, severe famine has struck. It's gotten to the point where some are boiling and eating their own infants. He spoke calmly, but the content was horrifying. What about the balance? Isn't the balance totally wrecked right now? Because the 6 realms of reincarnation house souls not only in humans but in other creatures as well, there's no issue with the balance itself. This too is thanks to you, Nether King. Stop trying to flatter me. It is simply the truth. I might deserve some credit for the idea, but saying it's all thanks to me is a bit much, not that he'd listen if I said so. Well, fine, if there's no issue then whatever. So what are you suggesting? We intend to create a gate that connects to Hell. Oh right. I completely forgot about making the Hell gates. I'd been thinking about making Hell gates for ages, but since I was the only one leaving Hell, and it was easier just to break the boundary whenever I wanted, I had totally spaced it out. You might wonder how I could forget for 100,000 years, but when smashing through dimensional boundaries becomes your daily routine, you eventually forget that there's a proper way to do things. So what are you asking me to do? Please stop the humans from approaching Osarizen. While we build the gates to Hell there, we will also eliminate the surrounding miasma. So you want me to pull guard duty? Yes. Rather than just lying around with nothing to do, wouldn't it be better to get some fresh air? Are you judging me for lying down all day? I think you know the answer to that better than anyone. This little brat's attitude. I looked at Jaman with half-lidded eyes, wondering if I should smack him, then I smirked. The concern reflecting in Jaman's face made me laugh despite myself. Are you actually worried about your master now? It would be most troublesome for us if our master were to lose his mind to depression. If you're worried, just say you're worried. Why be so dishonest? Yes, let's go with that. He let out a long sigh and I chuckled, patting him on the shoulder. Disgusting, you little bastard. I knew you'd say that. That's why I didn't say it. Ugh, gives me goosebumps. Anyway, I'm off. Don't slack off just because I'm not here. Yes. If you wait at Osa-reason, I will send our people shortly. Yeah. I gave a half-hearted wave and punched a hole in the air, stepping out into the Soul Society. It was my first outing in roughly 40,000 years. He appeared. Oh right, those guys hadn't left yet. Chapter 59. Who the hell is this? East Rukongai is hell. This is a refrain commonly heard among the civilians scraping by in the Rukongai. What one must remember, however, is that this sentiment isn't exclusive to the East. It's a sentiment shared throughout the entire Rukongai. Why such a rumor existed was beyond the comprehension of a man who had recently arrived in the Soul Society. To him, every district looked more or less the same, so he couldn't understand why the East was singled out. Do you know why East Rukongai is called Hell? I wouldn't know. Something about how people just drop dead once they step inside, I hear. Isn't that the case everywhere else? It clearly wasn't because of poor public security causing frequent deaths. In the Rukongai, human lives were already snuffed out like insects regardless of the district. While a vigilante corps had recently been established and security had improved slightly, it didn't feel real yet. The Soul Society was far too vast for a single organization to change the entire world. Given how they say people wither away until they die, maybe they're just starving. Ugh, what nonsense. You'd be better off saying a monster lives there. It couldn't be a story born of the difficulty of making a living. Once they became souls, the necessity for food vanished. Life was already a living hell. Just how harsh could a district be to be called hell itself? Unable to suppress his curiosity any longer, the man left the neighborhood where he had finally managed to settle and headed for East Rukongai. He knew it was a foolish endeavor. But if he didn't do something this stupid, his frustration would have probably killed him anyway. In a sense, the man's curiosity was like a poison. A lethal toxin that gnawed away at his life before he even realized it. Yet, the man ignored the danger. He was born with a temperament that couldn't tolerate an unsolved mystery, and he knew himself well enough to know he couldn't turn back. So this is East Rukongai. The first impression the man got upon arriving was nothing more than ordinariness. From the buildings to the atmosphere of the people roaming the streets, the flowing water and the soil, nothing seemed special. What exactly about this place makes them call it hell? This seemed peaceful enough. If this was hell, then was the rest of the Soul Society purgatory? The man decided to wander East Rukongai a bit more to gather information before jumping to conclusions. Through his wandering, he learned one thing: the people here didn't fear East Rukongai itself, but rather something located at its outermost edge. Oh, don't even bring that up. Why are you looking for such a thing? Just be grateful you're alive and get out of here. TSK. If you're looking for a place to die, you've come to the wrong place. Piss off. They were so afraid they wouldn't even mention it by name. Having been rejected over 10 times, the man let out a deep sigh and scratched his head. No, seriously, what could possibly be over there that makes them this terrified? The man scratched his head while staring at a rocky mountain visible in the distance. No matter how he looked at it, it seemed like an ordinary rocky peak. Ha! Is there some ghost living there that comes to kill you if you call its name or something? Well, if they wouldn't tell him, he had no choice but to go and see for himself. As he marched forward, the man blinked. Suddenly, a man with a fierce, intimidating impression appeared right before his eyes. The newcomer wore clothes that left his chest and belly exposed, with something resembling a shovel slung over his shoulder. His appearance was impossible to miss, yet he had definitely not been there just a second ago. What? There definitely wasn't anyone in front of me? Thinking he might be seeing things, the man blinked again. The man who had suddenly appeared scowled deeply at him. You've got a decent look on your mug. What the hell did you come all the way out here for, huh? I heard East Rakongai was called Hell, so I came out of curiosity. Ha! Quite the grand reason. So? What are your impressions now that you've seen it with your own eyes? Is it hell? The first man shook his head at the stranger's words. I was just wondering why it's so peaceful for a place called Hell. From what I can see, that mountain over there. Don't even finish that sentence. The man swallowed hard as the tip of the shovel was suddenly thrust right under his nose. You'll die if you set foot on that mountain for a reason as pathetic as that. More than 10 wagon loads of bastards like you have already croaked because of nothing but curiosity. Who are you to stop people from going to that mountain? Are you the owner of that place? I'm Tenjiro Kirinji. I'm just a herb picker who lives near that mountain. I got tired of seeing idiots like you dropping dead every chance they got, so I took over guard duties while I'm at it. If you understand, get the hell out. If you refuse, I'll kill you myself before you ever get to that mountain. The result is the same either way. The man said this as he poked the first man's chest with his shovel. The cold sensation sent a chill racing down the man's spine. If that stranger truly intended to kill him, he would have died without even realizing it. Fear of death tried to seize his heart, but as if rebelling against it, his curiosity flared even stronger. And if I say I must know even if I die? What a piece of work. I can't tell if you've got guts or if you're just reckless. I simply can't help my curiosity. Ha! I like the way you face me head-on, kid. Fine, follow me. But don't blame me when you die. You're on your own. I wouldn't have it any other way. At the man's answer, Tenjiro grinned fiercely and began walking with large strides. Watching Tenjiro walk ahead, the man followed with a smile, thrilled that his curiosity was about to be satisfied. So, what is it about that mountain that everyone's so afraid of? The name of that mountain is Mount Osor. A mountain that lives up to its name, the Mountain of Dread. Mount Osor? What's so special about one mountain? The outskirts of the Soul Society are crawling with them. The man spoke dismissively, but none of the people nearby who overheard said a word back. It wasn't because they secretly agreed, but because it simply wasn't worth discussing. Nauseated by their silence, the man continued, mentally branding the others as cowards. Does a man-eating ghost live there? Or is it full of wild beasts? It does eat people in a way. The man broke into a cold sweat. He hadn't expected the man-eating part to be even remotely true. But that only made him more intrigued that he wanted to know. What lived inside? What was eating people? Was there a way to deal with it? If he ran, could he escape? When the man smirked at those thoughts, Tenjiro chuckled and slapped the man's back with a resounding, "I don't hate bold idiots like you." Fine, consider this a bonus. I'll tell you. Open your ears and listen well. I'm only saying this once, got it? Loud and clear. That mountain devours life force. It's not a monster or a ghost. The mountain itself siphons your vitality. That's why idiots who wander in without a thought wither away and die before they get very far. And the way they go, it's damn gruesome. Tenjiro scowled as he recalled the sight of a priestess who had died trying to purify the miasma on Mount Osor. Black spots blooming across the body, vomiting blood with every breath, seizing with blood foaming at the mouth and eyes rolled back. TSK. Anyway, that's what that place is. You still going? How many times are you going to ask? Doesn't the fact that I'm still following you give you the answer? You little. Your mouth's got a mind of its own. Whatever. Better that than a crying coward. Just as he finished and was about to move again, in the distance, a man with a pickaxe slung over his shoulder came running toward them. Tenjiro-sama. Tenjiro-sama. Ah? What is it, Yahagi? What about the guard on the west side? It's trouble. We have trouble. Sensing the urgency in Yahagi's shout, Tenjiro's expression hardened into a deep scowl. If he's calling it trouble, it must be about the altar at the summit of Mount Osor. Reaching a conclusion instantly, Tenjiro gripped his shovel and glared toward the mountain. I'll go take a look. You take this guy and wait in the mountain hut. If anything happens, get out of here on your own. Understand? Yes, sir. Upon hearing the response, Tenjiro sprinted at full speed toward the summit of Mount Osor. In a heartbeat, he reached the altar atop the peak. This altar was built in the belief that the mountain was angry, an anger that drained life force and replaced it with lethal toxins in the body of anyone merely standing there. The lower priests who had gathered to soothe the mountain's wrath today were already collapsed and vomiting blood. Only the head priest and a few high-ranking priests who had some resistance were left, all staring intensely at one spot. There was no need to ask what had happened. The culprit of this situation was obviously the man standing atop the altar. Hey, you sure did a number on this place, didn't ya? Huh? Stop it, Tenjiro. Do not anger that person. At the head priest's scream, Tenjiro made a dumbfounded face, looking back and forth between the head priest and the man on the altar. Who is that guy? You fool, Tenjiro. Seeing Tenjiro point his finger at the man, the head priest rushed over and smacked him hard across the back of the head. Damn it, that hurts. The blow was so strong that Tenjiro actually tumbled to the ground. UND. The man standing on the altar watched the scene and scratched his head. Who the hell is this bastard? The question was asked with genuine bewilderment. Chapter 60. Installing the Hell Gate. My first impression of the guy who pointed a finger at me the moment he saw me and asked what kind of bastard I was? Well, it was simply, what the hell is wrong with this prick? It was because he was doing the whole one-man comedy show routine, and since it had that specific Bleach-style gag energy, I was caught completely off guard. Wait, if I really think about it, it's not just Bleach style, it's traditional Japanese comedy. Boken Tsukomi. Since I've only been seeing those dreadfully boring Ten Kings lately, it felt strangely refreshing. Finally feels like I'm in the world of Bleach. Even as I thought that to myself, my mouth, tainted by the bitterness of reality, spat out words on its own. What the hell is this bastard doing? Seriously though, what is he doing? He just pops out of nowhere and accuses me of being flashy and over the top? What did I even do? Shouldn't he explain himself clearly before we start talking about who's right or wrong? I started to move my foot with that thought in mind, but then I felt something squishy underneath. I pulled my foot back and stepped away. An offering table had been laid out right there. And I had just completely pulverized it under my heel. Oh, hold on. Right. I forgot these people were holding a ritual. The first guy I made eye contact with after stepping out of hell prostrated himself so hard I got flustered and completely blanked on the setting. My sincerest apologies. This lad is still young and couldn't control his hot blood. Please accept my life as an apology and forgive this insolence. What? Oh, whatever. Don't worry about it. I waved my hand dismissively, stepped down from the altar, and picked up one or two pieces of food that looked relatively intact. Maybe it's because I haven't eaten real food in so long, but it was damn delicious, especially this apple. On top of that sweet and sour taste that defines an apple, the firm flesh gave a satisfying crunch with every bite. Man, so sweet. I nibbled on it for a bit, set the half-eaten apple down and looked forward. An old man in a Shinto priest's outfit and a crowd of his lackeys were staring at me with faces full of tension. What are you looking at? First time seeing someone eat an apple? I tossed an unnamed fruit beside me into the air and caught it as I spoke. The guys staring at me flinched and trembled. It's probably because I don't fit the image of a god they have in their heads. I know why you're holding this ritual. You're trying to do something about the miasma here at Mount Osor, right? Why, yes, precisely. Right. I'll fix this place up so people can actually live here. So stop coughing up blood from the miasma and get going. You'll die if the toxins keep building up. Shoo shoo. As I sat down on a comfortable spot, I saw the priest's expression turn sour. He was clearly looking at me with a face that said, "Is this really a god?" So I snorted. God, my ass. I'm just as human as them. Of course, I had no intention of explaining all that, so I just raised an eyebrow and asked, "Not leaving?" At that, the priest gathered the others and scrambled down the mountain. I waited for a moment to see if they'd take the food, but no one came back for it. Well, I suppose you don't take back offerings once you've given them to a god. Might as well finish the meal then. My body isn't exactly ordinary, so I don't need to eat, but my mind is fundamentally human. The pleasure of eating still existed, so I filled my belly for the first time in ages. However, because of the era, the ritual table was mostly raw fruit, raw rice, and other small things. There was something that looked like a rice cake, but it was basically just steamed raw rice, so I didn't find it appealing. More importantly, that's what I stepped on earlier. As I finished my meal and licked my lips, I heard a grinding sound creak and felt a presence behind me. I turned around and locked eyes with that face I was starting to get sick of. And what exactly are you eating so heartily? What? I thought you were sending someone, but you came yourself. Don't you have a lot of work? I have enough time to install a gate. And well, there aren't many sinners that reach the hell of black darkness. In terms of sheer volume, the hells of needles, boiling water, cold, swords, tongues, snakes, and sawing are the busiest. Well, the most representative ones are clustered at the beginning. Must be nice for you not to have much work? In exchange, I handle quite a few chores. Like what I am doing right now. I nodded as Jaman shook his head with a cynical smile. I figured I should give our hard-working Jaman something to eat, so I tore off a piece of the pseudo-rice cake from the altar and handed it to him. Want some cake? No, I shall decline. Besides, why would I eat food that has been stepped on? Brat, you're sharp. If you intended to deceive me, you should have at least torn off a piece without a footprint. I wasn't trying to deceive you. I just wanted to mess with you, I told him. Jaman let out a deep sigh and shook his head. I chuckled as I watched the Hell Gate being installed. The Hell Gate was as massive and magnificent as its name suggested. On each side of the gate hung a skull twice the size of an average person, and behind them were Buddhist paintings. Actually, looking closer, it's not traditional. Isn't that Kagaya on the right? Then the one in the middle is me, and Hosuki is on the left. The 10 kings were lined up below, and further down the wardens, the Kusanada, Gozu, and Mezu, were depicted executing sinners in various ways fitting for each hell. Peeking inside, the gate didn't lead directly to Hell's Sky, but to the path to the other shore leading to the courthouse, specifically the Pure Spirit Hall, filled with blooming equinox flowers. Pure Spirit Hall? It is a transit point. Those without sin may stay in the Pure Spirit Hall, but if a sinner tries to linger, the equinox flowers transform into brambles and drive them out. Once they cross the river, it is hell. What? I've never heard of that. The 10 kings are busy managing their respective hells, so the Pure Spirit Hall is entirely my responsibility. But what is this? Transforming flowers? Since when were they like robots? It is nothing significant, merely an illusion created with Keto. It is a spell I developed alongside the creation of the Kusanada. I see. Well, fine. You made a good gate. Should it not be at least this much to be worthy of the name Hell Gate? I guess so. I nodded and stepped back to scan the whole gate again. That's when I noticed my depiction in the center was precisely bisected where the doors would part. Seeing a placement that was clearly filled with malice, my eye twitched. Hey, you bastard. Why did you paint me in the middle of the seam? Every time the gate opens, I get split in half. You wanna die? The perfect yet imperfect one. The one who leans toward neither side and maintains himself. I painted you there with that meaning in mind. He was so incredibly eloquent that I was speechless. He was essentially saying, I put you there for a good reason, why are you mad? That logic works on some people and doesn't on others. I'm the latter, you piece of shit. Ugh. Incensed by his cheekiness, I smacked him on the back of the head, just hard enough not to crack it, and then pushed him back through the newly installed gate. Oh hey. Take this with you. I tossed him all the fruits like apples and pears from the altar. Jaman caught them with skilled hands, looked at the fruits, and gave a bitter smile. I will enjoy them. If you eat them all alone, I'll pull out all your teeth. I do not particularly enjoy sweet things. I shall share them with the others. There's plenty, so distribute them fairly. I'm going to rest here for a bit before I head back. It's been a while since I've been outside. Might as well enjoy it. As I was thinking that, there was a rustling sound behind me. Then take this with you. He tossed something back at me. I caught it and saw it was a badge with a skull on it, resembling an identity tag. It is the Hell Key. Without it, your only way in is to break the gate, so please do not lose it. Fine, got it. I tucked the badge away and waved him off. Jaman bowed slightly and closed the Hell Gate, which promptly vanished from sight. Wait, didn't this bastard say he was sending people to purify this place? Why did he just say what he wanted and disappear? Did he dump the chores on me? As I was logically deducing this, the door opened again and someone stepped out. Greetings, Lord Nether King. It was a woman with long black hair and drooping eyes. Of course, she was a stranger to me. A new face. My name is Ise Mayheim. I serve as the scribe for the Hell of Black Darkness under Lord Jaman's command. Ah, I see. I've been so busy managing the gardens in Pure Spirit Hall that I haven't visited the lower hells since their creation. Have you truly never visited the other hells? Yeah. Other than Jaman and the other 3, I don't even know the faces or names of the 10 kings they appointed. I just figured they'd handle things on their own. I said that, but since all of hell is essentially in the palm of my hand, I can move immediately if I feel anyone doing anything shady. It just hasn't happened yet, so I haven't bothered. So, are you the one in charge of purification here? Yes. Despite appearances, I was once the head of a priest family. A task of this magnitude can be settled quickly. From a priest family but ended up in hell for sinning? No, I did not commit a crime. Lord Jaman brought me here. For a moment, I recalled a conversation I had with Jaman recently. It's not like I can just bring successors from the Soul Society, can I? If there's talent worth bringing, it's fine though. With what face would I dare do such a thing? Did this bastard lie to me again? Is he doing the exact same shit that got him sent to hell in the first place? Heat flared in my chest for a second, but I regained my composure by relying on the 100,000 years of trust one had in him. Jaman couldn't be that much of an idiot. What do you mean Jaman brought you? My explanation was lacking. It was I who petitioned Lord Jaman to take me to hell. That's a first. A human crawling into hell on their own feet. What were you thinking? Seeing the way my family was running, I grew sick of the world of the living. Right. Family problems. Nothing more to be said there. I scratched my head and made to leave. Oh, you may stay. In fact, it will be problematic if you aren't here. Just to be clear, I can't help you, okay? I'm total trash when it comes to keto and all that. No, it's because I forgot to pack a hell key. If you aren't here, I won't be able to return to hell. She's from the same mold as Jaman. Clever, but an airhead in the weirdest places. I let out a long sigh and sat down on a suitable rock. The ground was warm, feeling like a heated floor, which was quite pleasant. Chapter 61. Workforce +1. I spent my time lounging around, resting my rear on the scorching stone floor before rolling over to soak the heat into my back. While idly rolling about, I watched Icy as she purified the miasma of hell. First, when she said purification, I expected some grand ritual often seen in subculture media, but to my surprise it was nothing of the sort. She was just waving around a purification rod, a Gotei, with white paper strips attached to it. From the perspective of someone who knew nothing, it looked like she was just tidying up with a duster. Can that toxic hell miasma really be purified by something like that? If you asked me, well, it actually worked quite well. You could see the purification happening with the naked eye. Again, just how much miasma has accumulated here. As she moved around waving the rod, the white paper on the Gotei would stain into a deep purple, almost black color. Seeing it so clearly, I had no choice but to believe it. Whenever that happened, I would open a hell gate, and Icy would shake the Gotei over it, flicking the collected miasma back inside hell. We repeated this over and over, until the miasma in this entire area completely vanished. So far, it looked like there were no issues, but in reality there was one major problem. It was Icy's stamina. Even if it was smaller than hell, a mountain is still a mountain, and this place was quite vast. To walk every single step meticulously while constantly swinging a Gotei, that's no ordinary labor. For a scribe who usually spent her days in an office chair except for the commute, this was undoubtedly exhausting physical toil. If it's too hard, should I take over for a bit? I appreciate the thought, but using the Gotei must be done precisely according to the laws. It would be much faster for me to do it myself than to try and teach you. Sorry. I'll stop talking. She was huffing and puffing as if she were about to pass out just from trying to speak while purifying. Feeling guilty for bothering her, I decided to just shut my mouth. When someone is concentrating, you should stay quiet. Exactly. I was lying on the warm stone thinking that, when suddenly, what's with this sudden vibration? The stone began to rattle like a chair with a broken leg. Just as I started to move my body away, sensing it was no longer comfortable to lie there, a boulder shot up into the sky with immense force. And since I was standing right in front of that stone, naturally, a boob? I took a boulder launched by the explosion straight to the my body wasn't so weak that I'd die from something like this, but since it was a surprise attack to the chin, I ended up biting my tongue hard. In that moment, I gained a new realization. The realization that my greatest enemy is, in fact, myself. I trudged out from the spot, soaked head to toe by a downpour of scalding hot water. Yuck. Mother****. I thought my tongue was gonna fall off. Are you alright? I'm not alright. I bit my tongue and all I taste is blood. After spitting out the blood pooled in my mouth a few times, my tongue fully healed. I rolled my tongue around to confirm it was back to normal and let out a deep sigh. Why did this suddenly blow up? Was it supposed to just erupt like that? They don't teach you stuff like this in earth science, as I stared at the erupting water, the hot spring water. With a disgruntled look, I groaned slightly before speaking up. It is only a guess, but I suspect the spiritual power of the land, which was suppressed by the hell miasma, has burst forth. And that creates a hot spring? This is the best explanation I can offer, my apologies. I caught Ayase's shoulders as she bowed her head and shook mine. I'm not interrogating you, so don't apologize. I was just mumbling out of curiosity. Ah, yes. I nodded and stepped back, rubbing my chin as I watched the endlessly surging hot spring water. First off, it was hot. I didn't mind this temperature, but looking at Ayase's grimace, it was clearly a level of heat that a normal person couldn't withstand. Before we continue the purification, we'll have to do something about this spring first. Yes. The heat is one thing, but... Ayase, who had been frowning at the spring, suddenly covered her mouth with her sleeve and let out a dry cough. After coughing a few times and clearing her throat, she spoke through her hand. Phew, the sulfur makes it difficult even to breathe. Unless we manage this, we won't be able to proceed with the work. I wondered why the smell was so familiar. It was sulfur that it felt like finding a local specialty of hell right here in the Soul Society. So the problem now is what to do with this hot spring water. I said that, but I had already made up my mind. That I grinned at the surging spring and nodded to myself as I showed that I had decided on a course of action through my movements. Ayase looked toward me. I need you to purify the area from here toward the village first. I'll take care of this thing. Yes, I understand. I watched Ayase immediately head off to work before turning around. It was time for me to make use of this hot spring water. Of course, I couldn't dig out a hot spring with my bare hands, so I needed to grab some equipment first. And while I was at it, I might as well pick up some helping hands. I smiled as I recalled Yahagi with his pickaxe and Tenjiro with his shovel. Tenjiro. Ah, Tenjiro. The guy with the weird hair who would eventually enter Squad Zero by creating Kaido. His hairstyle was so different that I didn't recognize him at first. Am I getting dementia? Not a chance. I chuckled at the idle thought and tracked the spiritual power of the men I saw earlier. Soul Society might be vast, but it was narrower than hell, so I quickly arrived at the relatively large hut I was looking for. Normally, I would have kicked the door open with a loud greeting, but I felt spiritual pressures inside that seemed like they could vanish at any moment, so I refrained. Pardon the intrusion. I knocked lightly and entered. As expected, the interior of the hut was being used as a sick ward. Groaning people, the bitter smell of medicine, and Tenjiro moving around to nurse the sick. This confirmed it. This Tenjiro was indeed the Tenjiro I knew, though honestly I really couldn't get used to that long, straight hair. Who the hell are you? What did you come here for? You haven't fixed that attitude even after getting chewed out by that old priest? Aang? I don't care who you are. In here there's only the healed or the sick. If you don't like my attitude, why don't we have a chat with our fists? That'll show us who's right. Tenjiro strode toward me, using his body to shield the patients from view as he shoved his face right in front of mine. It was a classic standoff, but for someone like me who has seen everything there is to see in hell, it was just comical. I'm not going to touch the patients, so don't worry and step outside. I need a bit of your help. Yahagi. Keep a sharp eye on them. I'll be back in a second. No, I mean step aside. I'm not telling you to go out of the hut. Say that sooner, brat. You're making me misunderstand. Haha, this kid. I go easy on him and he keeps getting cocky. Chuckling, I smacked the back of Tenjiro's head, just as the old man had done earlier. Damn it, that hurts. Tenjiro collapsed with a shout, and I walked past his sprawled form to inspect the patient's conditions. I've never studied medicine, but I'm confident I know anatomy better than anyone. And why wouldn't I? I've spent thousands, tens of thousands of years in hell tearing sinners limb from limb, from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, bones, muscles, organs, nerves, blood vessels. I can read them at a glance. Of course, every body is structured differently, so I can't apply a single average, but a quick look is all it takes to see the truth. If it hurts, say so. Ugh. It hurts. The man right in front of me had a femoral neck fracture. He'd also developed bed sores from lying down for too long. Specifically, pneumonia was the biggest risk, yet the patient in the very next bed had a severe case of the flu. because he'd shoved all these different patients together without any separation. If left like this, every single one of them would die from secondary complications. I'll have to pay a visit to Nimeha if I want to fix this properly. Didn't you say you wouldn't touch the patients? I wouldn't have touched them if you were doing a proper job, you brat. Do you think just slathering herbs on everything is enough? Every patient has different needs. You've got patients who can be together and patients who should never be near each other, yet you've crammed them all into one corner for treatment? Don't make me laugh. Just having a good heart doesn't fix everything, you idiot. Tenjiro ground his teeth, seemingly having no retort, and hung his head low. Stand up, kid. I originally came to dig out a hot spring, but I can't just ignore this mess. I'll teach you the basics of medicine, so just follow me quietly. Medicine? It's the next step beyond just feeding people boiled herbs and smearing paste on them. When I said that, a faint glimmer of hope appeared on Tenjiro's face that I could tell how much he had been suffering in his heart as he watched his patients die. You want to save the people here, right? I can tell by the way you're agonizing over trying to keep these dying bastards alive. I just don't want to see them dying right in front of me. He just used I instead of Sama, this great me, that he must be so flustered he forgot his arrogant self-designation. I'll help you save them. Are you serious? You can really save these guys? Despite his appearance, he really was soft-hearted that I chuckled at him, rejoicing like a child, and nodded. Yeah. I'll help you, so follow me. In exchange, I have a condition. What is it? What's the condition? I'm going to build a hot spring later. You're going to help me with that. Oh. I'll do that as much as you want. Tenjiro nodded with a dead serious expression. Watching him, I laughed softly. I threw a quick glance at the man staring intently at me from the deepest part of the hut before leading Tenjiro outside. Chapter 62. I Feel Reborn. Teaching Tenjiro was easier than I expected. When I first saw him, his mannerisms and appearance screamed delinquent, punk, and thug. I thought teaching him anything would be a massive headache, but once I actually started, I didn't get that vibe at all. His desire to heal the sick was genuine, and his passion was so intense that if I taught him one thing, he'd charge in demanding 10 more. He wasn't dim-witted either. He absorbed everything I taught him instantly and made it his own, making the instruction quite rewarding. And so I taught him everything I could. Patient classification, viruses, bacteria, physical structure, anatomy, and the importance of cleanliness and sterilization. That I shared every bit of medical knowledge I possessed. Of course, I'm no expert, and I don't have the depth of a 21st century resident physician. However, this is the distant past, a time when leprosy is called a divine curse, and when people catch pneumonia or pulmonary edema, they can do nothing but pray. The very concept of medicine hasn't even been established, yet my handful of knowledge isn't enough to synthesize penicillin or anything that advanced. But even with that meager amount, I can save a truckload of people here. Master. Don't call me master. No, forget it. Call me whatever you want. I've rejected everyone who tried to call me master except for Shiryu, Jaman, Rizatsu, and Myron. It's likely a trauma of sorts. Or maybe I just dislike the title, but I allowed it for this guy. He follows and trusts me like a loyal hound. I figured I could at least grant him this much. After I became his master, I taught him in earnest for what ended up being 3 years. Now, not a single patient remained in his medicine shop, which he had given the self-indulgent name of Kirindin. Every dying patient who had come here was now fully recovered and had left Kirindin with a smile. I patted the shoulder of Tenjiro, who was looking around the empty ward with a sentimental expression. This concludes the lectures on human anatomy. From here on, you must discover the rest with your own hands. I'm damn well grateful for everything. I smiled in satisfaction at Tenjiro's vigorous response and nodded. All right, let's go dig some dirt. Wait, aren't you going to ask why we're suddenly digging dirt? Huh? Didn't you say 3 years ago that we were going to build a hot spring? He remembered that? The more I see of this guy, the more I like him. You really remind me of Shiryu. Shiryu? Never heard that name. Is it someone famous? I guess you wouldn't know the name. I suppose after over 100,000 years, unless you're from the Shiba clan, an outsider wouldn't remember it. Looking at it this way, a truly vast amount of time really has passed, and I smacked my lips at the relentless passage of time and shrugged. Maybe you'll recognize him if I call him the founder of the Shiba clan? The founder? Tenjiro froze like a statue at the sudden tidal wave of information. It looked like his brain was working overtime to process what he'd just heard. Just how old are you exactly? What's the point of counting? It's meaningless. Just assume I'm older than anyone else you know, it's easier that way. You're like a grandfather, no, an ancestor at this point, aren't you? Listen here, brat. I don't have kids. I'm not even married, so how could I have children? As I let out a deep sigh, Tenjiro chuckled confidently and jabbed his thumb at his chest. Aren't disciples the children of one's heart? I'll be your son. Seeing Tenjiro's playful grin, I let out a smirk and whacked him on the back of the head. Damn it, that hurts. Hearing what had now become his signature line, I let out another long sigh. You look older than I do, you bastard. Damn it, that hurts. What the? I didn't even hit you that time, why'd you make the noise? My heart hurts. My heart. I was already self-conscious about looking old. If you look old when you're young, you'll look young when you're old. Look on the bright side. And besides, your face is going to stay exactly like that forever. Only your hairstyle will change. I swallowed the words that would have been a leak of heavenly secrets and patted his shoulder as he sighed deeply. Master, you've looked like you're in your mid-20s for over 100,000 years. You really shouldn't be the one saying that. Well, I'm an outlier. You shouldn't compare yourself to me. Ha. I suppose that's true. He's quick to concede, I like that about him. With that thought, I led Tenjiro toward the mountain. I had originally planned to conscript Yahagi for labor too, but in the last 3 years he had gotten married and set up a household. So it was just Tenjiro and me building the hot spring. Actually, there was one more. Greetings. You've been hovering silently beside us for 3 years, so I thought you were a ghost. Turns out you were a living person after all. I glared at the man who had been watching us gloomily from behind, just like that bastard Jaman, wondering what whim possessed him to speak up now. The man bowed his head low. I apologize for that. However, I felt it was not my place to recklessly intervene, so I chose to observe instead. Cut the crap. You think I don't know your type? You were just testing the waters while staying eloquent with your words. He gave off the same vibe as Jaman did back in the day, which immediately soured my mood. I clicked my tongue and scowled. At that, the man gave a bitter smile and nodded. Is he smiling? Yes. I was testing the waters. I needed to determine whether an entity who easily shatters the boundaries of the 3 worlds and remains unaffected in a place filled with the miasma of hell was a threat or not. This is a new pattern. I thought he was the type to craft devious schemes in the dark like Jaman, but I was wrong. Since he flat out admitted, I did it because you're scary, lol, I didn't have much of a retort. Even if it were me, I'd avoid a monster like myself out of fear. So coming out like this now means you've decided it's okay? I have decided to plaque my trust in your character. If I have caused offense, I apologize once more. Seeing his sincere apology, I thought for a moment before sighing. Well, at least he isn't a total creep like Jaman. Normally, when you meet people, you start with an introduction and a greeting. You're grown, yet you lack common sense. The man's eyes widened, and after grasping my meaning, he gave a light chuckle and bowed. Using Yura for inlet and Hara for field, then Gen for source and Shin for examine. I am Jensen. Urahara Jensen. I look forward to your kind acquaintance. I thought he felt strangely suspicious, so he's of that Urahara bloodline. No, wait. Technically, that Urahara guy is of his bloodline. I happen to be short on hands, so this is perfect. You follow us. Pardon me, but what about tools? Here. Use this. When he asked for tools, I threw him the shovel I was holding. Good. Now I can sit back and rest. Don't call me cowardly, I taught medical skills for 3 years without charging a single cent for tuition. I think I've earned the right to work him a little. Why draft Jensen, you ask? Consider it a contempt of Nether King tax. Honestly, for stalking us for 3 years, letting it slide in exchange for some digging is a very generous sentence. And so we arrived at the summit of Mount Osor. Quite a lot had changed over these past 3 years. First, the Hell Gate. The fully completed gate had become invisible and untouchable to anyone without an Oyukind in its place. A shrine had been built on the site of the gate. Of course, given what was housed inside, we couldn't put any Buddhist statues or anything like that in there. Aside from a massive torii gate, it was empty, an anomalous building that felt more like a movie set than a place of worship. Things have changed quite a bit here. There was nothing but the altar the old man used for rituals before. Anything will change given 3 years. To me it's but a fleeting moment, but to the people living here it must feel quite long. As I was admiring the shrine, Gen-sin, who had been wandering around the perimeter, approached me. By the way, has the miasma of Mount Osor been resolved? The one who answered wasn't me but Tenjiro. Hey, do you think Master would suggest this without considering that? Stop whining and start digging. Or what, are you saying you're too scared of the toxins to do it now? Ha! I believe there's a misunderstanding. I wasn't trying to complain. It's just that if any toxins remain, I wanted to research them a bit. He sounded so much like Jaman that it was almost disgusting. I scratched my head and shrugged. In truth, the toxins of Mount Osor had been fully purified a year ago, and no matter how poor Icy's stamina was, she lived on the mountain and performed purification every single day. There was no way it would take 10 or 20 years. It's gone. The purification was finished a year ago. Is that so? How disappointing. I let out a hollow laugh at the sight of Gen-sin, whose motivation had suddenly plummeted to 0. Why do you want to research that miasma anyway? Just as medicine becomes poison in excess, and poison can be medicine when used correctly. I wondered if that miasma could be used for healing if managed properly. And your real motive? I don't know when it might happen, but if that miasma ever causes a problem again, I want to have a countermeasure ready. Are people born geniuses and then become weird, or are weird bastards the ones who become geniuses? I let out a deep sigh at Gen-sin, who confessed his reasoning without a shred of hesitation. Come to hell sometime later. You'll be able to research things to your heart's content there. That is the best news I've heard yet. Hell, huh? I have indeed wanted to visit at least once. Real motive? I am completely serious about that. He really is a freak. I didn't want to deal with him anymore, so I waved my hand and urged him to get back to digging. After several weeks of diligent digging, a bubbling sulfur hot spring was finally completed. Master, this hot spring, a normal person wouldn't be able to enter this. It might be a bit hot for an average human. No, the water itself is so acidic that if a normal person got in, their skin would literally melt off. I didn't know that. Well, it doesn't really apply to me anyway. If I'm fine in magma and lava, what's a little acidic water? Oh, but it'll probably be great for scrubbing off dead skin. I shrugged and submerged myself in the spring. As the hot water felt like it was drawing all the impurities out of my body, I let out a long breath and relaxed my muscles. Ugh, this is what a bath should be. I feel reborn. Does it feel good? Feels like every impurity is leaving my body. You wanna hop into? No, I'll pass. My skin is sensitive. Real motive? I don't want to get into a bath that will skin me alive. As I chuckled and traded trivial jokes with Gen-sin, Tenjiro, who had been watching us, suddenly widened his eyes. That's it. It seemed Tenjiro had realized something while listening to our conversation. He hurriedly bid me farewell and rushed back. Several years later, news reached me that Tenjiro had developed and had been inducted into Squad 0.as for what I was doing during all that time. Ah, this is the life. I've been soaking in this hot spring for years now that I was just thinking about whether I should build a grand public bathhouse while I'm at it. Chapter 63. The day hell collapsed. They say even mountains and rivers change in 10 years. If a decade can change the landscape, then what of a unit like 10,000 years? Well, it goes without saying. For a staggering 30,000 years I used the shrine at Mount Osor as my base to wander the Soul Society. When I had nothing to do, I'd return to the mountain to enjoy the hot springs. In that time, Osirizen, once a land of pure terror, somehow became a semi-famous tourist destination. Of course, it didn't become a tourist attraction overnight. How could a land where people dropped dead for decades change its image so easily? Perhaps because it was a place so closely associated with death. People who missed their deceased children or family members began coming here to offer prayers. To those few who prayed with such heart-wrenching sorrow, I'd sometimes show them the Hell Gate, explain the 6 realms of reincarnation and offer a bit of comfort, and naturally that sparked rumors that this was the land closest to hell. Because of that, every year, no, almost every month now, people come seeking this place. There are those who come to offer sincere prayers. Then there are those who come to enjoy the hot springs that Tenjiro dug out and Gen-sin adjusted for toxicity. Recently, some bold fools have even wandered as far as the springs behind the shrine where I reside. They usually see me, freak out and bolt. After that, rumors started. reading that a god lived behind the shrine, turning it into a divine spirit ground. What does this mean? It means a semi-famous tourist spot became a damn famous one. It was already crowded and chaotic, but now it's basically an ant colony. It took 170,000 years to reach this point. Phew, time sure flies. As I let out a deep sigh and submerged myself in the spring water, I felt a massive spiritual power approaching. A familiar one, something I'd felt many times before. It wasn't the Zero Division. Those guys rarely ever leave the Royal Guard Palace. Then who is it? After a long soak, I stepped out, dried myself quickly by raising my body temperature, and threw on my clothes. The person I encountered was none other than a young girl. She was a stranger. Her spiritual power was certainly familiar, yet she was someone I didn't have in my memories. Sitting on the roof of the shrine, I pondered over whose spiritual power this could be until the girl knelt before the shrine and began to pray. Sob hic. Mother. Mother. I wondered what had happened to make her weep so much. She looked like she might wither away and die from dehydration, and if I leave her like that, she really will die. As I let out a heavy sigh, the praying girl looked up. She noticed I was here. Even skilled individuals usually can't find me when I mask my presence, yet she managed it. Excuse me, what? Wiping away her tears with the back of her hand, the girl glanced at me tentatively and gave a small, careful gesture. It's dangerous up there, please come down. The girl, who had been sobbing for her mother just a second ago, was now worrying about my safety the moment she saw me. It wasn't even about me sitting on a place meant for a god. She was simply concerned because it looked dangerous. This one the same type as Hosuki? Growing interested, I hopped lightly off the roof. The girl's eyes went wide and she suddenly dashed toward me. It was obvious she was trying to catch me. Horrified, I kicked the air to kill my momentum and landed behind her. The girl, who had intended to use her own body as a cushion, lost her target and naturally tumbled forward, rolling across the ground. Hey brat. If you try to catch me with your body, you'll break your spine. Well, isn't it better for two people to be slightly hurt than for one person to be severely injured? Compassion for others, self-sacrifice without expectation of reward, and that familiar spiritual power. It was her. The reincarnation of Shiba Hosuki. I smirked at the dirt-covered girl as she gave a bashful grin. Do you remember me? I asked on the off chance she might, but she just wore a dazed expression, her eyes spinning as she started to think. Anyone could see she didn't know me. I sighed and shook my head. If you don't, wait a moment. I'll try to remember. She held up a hand to stop me, clutched her head with both hands, and thought for a long time before carefully opening her mouth. The florist mister from West Rakongai? Who the hell is that? I'm sorry. I don't know. If you're a benefactor I've forgotten, could you please tell me what happened between us? As expected, memories are wiped upon reincarnation. I already knew this, but I felt a strange sense of novelty as I settled her doubt. Of course you don't know. This is the first time we've met. Thank goodness, I'm a bit slow, so I forget things often. I was worried you might be a benefactor I had forgotten. I'm relieved. Relieved? There are plenty of people who would try to scam you by claiming they're a benefactor you forgot. It's okay. They'd only do that because they need help too. Though it is a bit sad that they would commit the sin of lying. They'll surely regret it later, but if they repent eventually, isn't that enough? Not worrying about her own well-being, but worrying about the sinner who deceived her. She was Hosuki through and through. Seeing her consider their future rather than just immediate pity, she had certainly grown much more than the Hosuki of back then. Kagaya was right. So what are you here for? Well, about that. Her face paled as she recalled a bad memory, and she cautiously began her story. She had a mother who died after a life of committing many sins. Because of the saying that those who do wrong go to hell, the girl spent every day offering food and prayers, wishing for her mother to go to heaven. In the process, she heard stories of Osarizen being the place closest to hell and came here hoping she might catch even a glimpse of her mother's shadow. What did she do that makes you so certain she went to hell? Things that are hard to even put into words. I don't want to claim it wasn't my mother's fault. However, if she sincerely repents her sins, even if it's late, and wishes for salvation, I want to save her, even if it means sacrificing my own body. The same firm resolve she showed when she saved that sinner in front of the crater, with a mindset far more refined than before. Kagaya would have to acknowledge this. Then go save her yourself. I'll open the door for you. Huh. Leaving the stunned girl behind, I stood before the shrine. It's been a while since I opened the gates, since I sent Icy back to hell after she finished her work. Stand back. If you're too close, you'll die. Ah, yes. The girl stepped back 2 or 3 paces. Standing there, she'd be crushed to death by the spiritual pressure of hell. More. Further back. Keep going. Oh, even further. If she stays there, she'll die from the toxic miasma of hell. Go all the way to that torii gate back there. Will here be okay? Yeah. Stand right there. After confirming the girl had moved back, I took the uken from my robes. Truthfully, opening the gates of hell isn't that much of a feat if you possess the uken. You can open and close them freely. However, if you add one more factor, things get complicated. Namely, sending a living person into hell. You could say the procedures are complex, but the real issue is that they usually just die. Unable to withstand the miasma of hell that leaks out when the gate opens. No matter who it is, if they die in hell, their soul is bound there. It's like, what do you call it? It's like their spawn point gets glitched and they're reborn in hell. They become unable to leave until their next reincarnation. So, to send a living person into hell, they either have to be strong enough to resist the miasma, carry something that can purify it, or have a person present who can provide that purification. First off, it's unlikely that girl is strong enough to endure the miasma. Pass. An item to purify the toxins? There's none here. Pass. Then there's only one way left. The girl blinked, watching the back of the man standing before the shrine. She couldn't understand why he had told her to move so far back. She didn't even know who he was, so how could she possibly know what he intended to do? She simply trusted his warning that it was dangerous and stepped back. Will he be all right? If it was dangerous for her, wouldn't it be dangerous for him too? Thinking this, she gazed at the distant man. The man took something from his clothes and tossed it forward. Clap. The moment he clapped his hands, a colossal gate manifested. The gate had been there from the start. It was merely invisible to the eyes of the girl, who lacked the qualification to see it. The moment she laid eyes on the revealed hell gate, the girl gasped. Its overwhelming size, seemingly reaching the heavens, reminded her of the helplessness of humans before death, and the depictions of suffering sinners carved into the gate instilled a primal fear of evil karma. It was an exhortation to all the living to do good, and a warning to accumulate no ill deeds. Then, with a heavy, grinding sound, the gate opened, and the wails of the damned stretched out in every direction. Terrible screams that tightened one's heart just by listening, and a toxicity that felt as if it would rot the skin of anyone standing nearby, surged toward the girl. Any living soul would tremble in fear seeing that gate and the landscape beyond, but what the girl felt was something entirely different. Mother is in there. She felt compassion for the suffering sinners. She felt sorrow looking upon a hell filled with endless pain. As if entranced, she approached the wide-open hell gate. The man moved to stop her in surprise, but seeing something, he smirked and stepped aside. What do you think? They simply did not know. The sentient beings who practiced evil deeds did so only because there was no one to lead them. What will you do? For the sake of the beings within the 6 realms who suffer due to their karma, I shall widely bestow skillful means and become the hand that leads them. What do you desire? I pray that until the end of future eons, I shall widely bestow skillful means upon those suffering the retribution of their sins, so that they may be liberated from their pain. As the girl spoke, a halo appeared behind her head. The miasma of hell no longer blocked her path. A sense of omnipotence wrapped around her, and the feeling that she could do anything filled her entire being. Until every sentient being trapped in hell or destined for hell is liberated, I shall not attain Buddhahood. With those words, the girl discarded everything she possessed. The halo vanished and the sense of omnipotence scattered. The miasma of hell began to invade her body once more, but the girl smiled, accepted everything, and walked toward hell. And on that day, a monumental incident occurred. Every single sinner in hell attained liberation and ascended, and so hell collapsed for a time. Chapter 64. Time flies. I had a vague feeling ever since Kagaya appeared from behind the girl. But I never imagined things would turn into a disaster of this magnitude. No, seriously. Who would have thought a guy would drag his dying body into hell just to conduct one-on-one counseling until every single sinner reached nirvana? At first, a blinding light erupted from between the hell gates, making me think a bomb had gone off. Then, suddenly, every presence I could sense in hell vanished as if it had all been a lie. I rushed into hell in a panic, only to find a girl with a halo behind her head, just like Kagaya's, forcibly ejecting the sinners from hell. Every single one of them had a peaceful, enlightened expression as they scattered into dust. Because of that, hell ended up collapsing once. Well, I expected it, but it really turned out like this in the end. I did a very quick lap around hell just in case, but as expected, there was no one. It was just like the first day I stepped foot in this place, with every sinner except the wardens gone. The same sense of emptiness I felt when I first arrived washed over me. The image of that guy who abandoned his Pidgeot saying, "Look, it's Pallet Town," popped into my head unbidden. Letting out a deep sigh, I wiped my face with my hands and flopped down onto the floor. What should I do now? Should I start preparing for Hell Season 2? I guess I have to. I've kept this place running for over 200,000 years. I can't exactly give up and wash my hands of it now. With another heavy sigh, I thought of Jaman. Fuck. Now that I think about it, the 10 kings were sinners too. Just as I was seriously considering quitting, a few familiar presences manifested in hell again. What the? They didn't just respawn like trash mobs, they popped out of thin air. I blinked and looked toward the presences. The 10 kings were sprinting toward me, their official hats askew and cold sweat pouring down their faces. They looked absolutely pale and terrified. Even though I knew they wouldn't die unless something truly extraordinary happened, for a second, I thought they looked like they were running for their lives. What in the world happened? Everything suddenly went bright, and the truths of the universe started pouring into my head. Something about there being no self inside me, some total nonsense about, what was that Om Mani Padme Hum supposed to be? No, all sins vanish and all merit arises? It's only natural for sinners to pay for their crimes. And furthermore, I can't tell you how shocked I was when Lord Kagaya, who had vanished since hell was established, suddenly appeared before my eyes. No, but really, what on earth? 10 people shouting at once was enough to drive me insane. You bastards, I'm not Prince Shitoku. I can't understand you if 10 people talk at the same time. I felt like telling them to shut up before I cracked their skulls open, but since I had a guilty conscience, I stayed quiet and listened to them rant. Are you done? Yes. I've calmed down a bit. Once they settled, I gave them a rough explanation of what happened and why. All 10 of them looked horrified, and then they started spiraling again. Wait, so you're saying hell, which we've maintained for over 200,000 years, was wrecked in a single day and there was nothing you could do? Are you serious? It's certainly a good thing in principle, but this is a bit. If we hadn't already balanced the souls through the 6 realms of reincarnation, the 3 worlds would have been severely shaken. No. Then you're saying all those bastards in hell attained enlightenment without even paying for their crimes? What kind of crazy talk is that? Rizatsu, you're too agitated. However, I must hear the full story as well. Master, how did this happen? I rarely have reason to leave my post, so it's our first time meeting and I'm truly sorry to speak like this, but have you lost your mind? In short, as the price for dropping a bomb, no, a living nuclear bomb, into hell, I was being given a massive earful by the 10 kings. Actually, I was still Edding chewed out in real time. From their perspective, their workplace had suddenly gone boom for no reason, so it was only natural they'd be pissed. I scratched my head while listening to them drone on. Hey, I'm the one who made hell, so why are you guys angrier than me? Honestly, I was pissed too that I'd spent not 1,000, but tens of thousands of years playing SimCity with this hell, only for it to collapse like a house of cards. Of course I was angry, but it already happened. What were we supposed to do? What power did we have, besides grinding my teeth and sharpening my blade, swearing that I'd flip the whole table if this ever happened again? There was nothing else to be done. No, well, I know what you're getting at. But what's the plan? We have no choice. Are we going to go out there ourselves and drag back every single person who reached nirvana? Isn't there a clause saying once reincarnation is complete, they're considered separate from their past self? If you hadn't opened the door in the first place, does someone who's meant to reach enlightenment just stop because a door is closed? Didn't you see Kagaya? That bastard is a guy who reached nirvana while literally dying in hell. Whether I opened the door or not, the result would have been the same. So instead of a useless power struggle and making an enemy for later, I figured I'd just let it happen once. Since I was essentially saying hell needed a reset anyway, the ones complaining began to shut up, letting out groans of frustration. Of course, I understood their complaints, and my own mood wasn't much better, so I sighed and scratched my head again. Well, it already happened. Let's look on the bright side. Even without Xidagarba, we were going to have to flip the place eventually. You mean hell? Yeah. I saw some bastards trying to build secret hideouts under the noses of Oxhead and Horseface. There's no point talking about it now, though. Whatever. Since things turned out like this, let's just scrap it all and start over. It's a renovation. I'd been killing time at the hot springs because I had nothing to do. This is actually fine. It's shitty, it's annoying, it's a complete mess, but it's fine. It's for the best. That's what I chose to believe, because if I didn't think that way, I felt like I'd destroy hell with my own hands out of pure futility. That I suppressed my surging emotions and continued. It's been 200,000 years, right? The place was starting to creak anyway. We can fix the maintenance, build new blood ponds, move the Nether King Palace and the Pure Spirit Hall. I slung my arms over the shoulders of the two closest kings and gave them a bright smile. Let's all work hard for just a bit longer. I tried to change the mood, but the 10 kings' expressions were still sour. These bastards. Smile. Ha ha ha. Ha ha, yeah. You guys like it, right? Now get back to work. You're coming too, master. Of course. Sigh. Enlightenment or whatever. If anyone pulls this crap again, I'll fold them in half, even if it means cutting ties with Kagaya. I sharpened my internal blade and followed the 10 kings back into hell. Hey, by the way, you guys were enlightened too. Why did you come back? The 10 of them looked at each other and nodded. It was Shiryu who stepped forward as their representative. It's our sense of responsibility. You brat, saying something that actually touches my heart. I chuckled and rubbed the tip of my nose. Rizatsu crossed her arms and let out a long sigh. Also, we were afraid that if we reached Nirvana right then and there, you'd find our reincarnated selves and drag us back to hell regardless of the rules. You brat, saying something that actually pisses me off. Agagagagak. Always ruining a good moment. Does this guy get more like a kid as he ages? I gave him an iron claw to snap him out of it, and he started hopping around in joy. I called it maintenance, but it was essentially a total rework. Yes, hell. Season 2. Usually there's a stereotype that Season 2 ruins the franchise, but fortunately hell was such a mess to begin with that it didn't feel like it could get any worse. In fact, the design became cleaner, you could even say it looked better. First, I took the river from the Pure Spirit Hall that Kagaya had made. I made it longer and wider to create the Sanzu River. In Bleach, hell isn't for everyone, it's only for the true blue sinners, so it was technically meaningless, but it made for great landscaping. Coastal towns have ocean views, hell has Sanzu River views. The pros? It's nice to look at a river, and occasionally watching sinners float by is good entertainment. What's fun about watching sinners? Well, seeing them float by with their heads on fire makes it look like a lantern festival. It's quite a sight. The downside is it's a bit noisy, but compared to other parts of hell, this level of noise is positively civil, and there were several other additions. Inspired by the hot springs of Osirizen, I created the hell of boiling blood ponds, the mountain of needles, and some leisure spots the sinners can never access, like a football pitch, a gateball court, and a baseball stadium for me and the kings to use when we're bored, and, phew, finally it looks normal. A grand palace was added, one that wouldn't lose to the Soul King Palace in terms of majesty. What the hell is this giant thing? It is the Nether King Palace. The Nether King Palace, I remember, was a one-room studio. It is the Nether King Palace. I sighed, looking at Jaman, who had become a Nether King Palace bot. Tear it down! That palace? Yeah, just so you know, the Nether King Palace has an automatic internal cleaning function. Fine, keep it then. By the time we finished scrapping and rebuilding hell, 780,000 years, then 980,000 years had passed. Now barely 20,000 years remained before the start of the original story. Time really flies. Chapter 65, not exactly what I wished for. Swish, swish, scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound of a stiff bamboo broom sweeping across stone floors echoes through the hall. It is the sound of the brooms held by Gozu and Mezu, the automated wardens who handle the cleaning of the Nether King Palace. The strangely rhythmic sound feels almost like falling rain. If you listen closely, it doesn't take long before you find yourself nodding off. They say the sound of rain is great for insomnia. Thanks to that, I've spent most of my free time lately just rotting away in sleep. I've managed to kill 10,000 years that way. Just 10,000 more and I'll finally hit the start of the original story. Haha. Lying around doing nothing truly is the best. F***ck. Why does time move so goddamn slow? Ugh, arg, you. I rolled around the floor making bizarre beast-like noises until a sudden wave of post-sloth clarity hit me, leaving me limp and staring at the ceiling. One of the 10 kings once told me that if I was just going to sleep all day I should find something to do. But honestly, if there were actually work for me to do, would I be lying here like a slug? I put in a lot of effort managing the fields of equinox flowers near the Sanzu River before they sprouted, but once they bloomed they started growing on their own, using the corpses of sinners as fertilizer. Now they don't need any maintenance at all, leaving me with zero responsibilities. The Pure Spirit Hall is in a similar state. They say people are buried under the flowers of hell, that's why they grow so well. Since I really had nothing better to do, I tried sitting in on the 10 Kings trials just to watch the proceedings, and it was actually quite entertaining for a while. The sheer number of lunatics in this world is staggering. From the guy who murdered someone for revenge and claimed he had no regrets despite falling to hell to various other dramas, it was like watching a non-stop marathon of trashy morning soaps. But even that gets old after a while. Of course, every now and then, a case comes along with a twist so cliché-breaking or an impact so hard that it's difficult to forget. For example, the Vengeance of the Pit Vipers case. ****** in the hell of poisonous snakes, overseen by King Byansong where vipers swarm in writhing masses. A new sinner arrived. The charge was murder. There wasn't much to investigate. The trial was over in an instant. Then came the moment for the sinner's final defense. My lover, he cheated on me. So I just took my revenge. How could he do that to me? He saw his partner cheating and couldn't take it, so he killed the guy. I get it. In the past I used to get really invested in these stories, huffing and puffing about what a bastard the victim was. But now? If they're dead, they probably deserved it. I just brush it off. It's all so stale. The sin of murder is deep and heavy. If it was for the sake of justified revenge, there is room for consideration. However, that does not make the sin of taking a life any lighter. King Byansong, who handles violent crimes, trailed off as he scratched his head while looking into the mirror of karma. Wait, what's he seeing to make him act like that? Hey, what is it? See for yourself, my lord. I usually try to avoid interfering in trials, but seeing King Byansong react that way piqued my curiosity. When I asked, he gave me a sour look and showed me the johari. A man was laughing and drinking tea with another woman before spending a passionate night together. The man currently on trial was hiding in the shadows, gnashing his teeth. What's wrong with this? It's just the same old scene of a murder following a discovery of infidelity. It's everywhere, just as I thought. That the scene of the man stabbing the other man played out. So? What about it? The lover the sinner is talking about is that man who was stabbed. I froze mid-breath and stared at King Byansong. The king simply closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. Looking back at the mirror of karma, I gave a nonchalant shrug. Well, that can happen. I don't particularly care about someone's sexual orientation. Not my business. As long as they aren't hurting me, they can love whoever they want. Besides, I see this kind of stuff all the time when I visit King Song-jae's cold hells. I'm used to it. There was that one serial rapist who specifically targeted 57 different men. This is nothing. Then. That doesn't mean the murder is justified. I was originally going to suggest a reduced sentence, but since he showed zero remorse, I told the king to throw the book at him. Maximum penalty. A sin cannot be justified. A sinner who feels no regret and refuses to reflect deserves no mercy. And so the sinner was dropped into the deepest pits of the hell of poisonous snakes. The next unforgettable case was the boy who cried wolf. It wasn't that the case itself was impactful, but the sinner's age was so young that it stuck with me. I think he was 12 years old. That he kept deceiving people with lies. So when the wild beasts actually appeared, no one believed him. As a result, all those people were mauled to death, which is how he ended up in hell. It was such an impressionable incident that I remember it as the shepherd boy trial. But again, you see it once or twice and your threshold for shock goes up. Eventually, even stuff like that feels like nothing. Repeated stimulation numbs a person. You reach a point where you can guess exactly what story is coming next. For instance, if a horror movie shows a character alone, centering the shot on them while leaving a dark space in the background, what do the viewers think? Exactly. They think, something's about to pop out of that darkness, a ghost, a monster, or a killer. A person's life is similar when viewed from a distance. If you just watch, you can predict it all. Sigh. I used to wonder why the minds of long-lived beings always seem to go a bit haywire, and now I know why. This is it. Everything you do feels like déjà vu. Everything you see, everything you hear, it's all déjà vu, having lived for so long and experienced so many similar things. I'm starting to get confused whether I'm living in the present or just reminiscing about the past. Isn't there anything with a bit of impact? As I was rolling around the floor with those thoughts, the Gozu cleaning the Nether King Palace approached me. I stayed lying down, wondering what it was doing, and then the Gozu pushed me aside with its broom. The hell? No, seriously, what was that? Scritch, scritch, scritch. Did this bastard just classify me as trash? I blinked, unable to process the situation for a moment. But as I slowly started to get up, the sweeping Gozu flinched, trembled, and immediately turned its back to clean somewhere else. Fine, *CK it. I'm going. I'll go do something, okay? Letting out a massive yawn, I walked out of the Nether King Palace, greeted by the same old landscape of hell that I'm sick of this, ugh. I sighed and was scratching my head when a single hell butterfly came fluttering toward me. Hell butterflies are the carrier pigeons sent by the 10 kings since they can't move during a trial. If it's coming to me, it means someone has something to say while they're on the bench. I wonder who sent it. I extended my index finger, and the hell butterfly landed on it. Its wings beat softly. Jaman's voice echoed out. Try going outside for once. After delivering that single sentence, the hell butterfly dispersed into spiritual particles and vanished. Are you shitting me? He sent a hell butterfly just to say that. First the Gozu, now this guy. It's not like I've been slacking for thousands of years. I finished everything I needed to do, and just because I roll around for a measly 10,000 years, people start treating me like garbage. That's just cold, seriously. I was scratching my head and letting out a deep sigh when another hell butterfly flew toward me. Assuming it was more of the same, I gave a reluctant finger. The butterfly landed. Soul Society is under invasion. It appears they are targeting the Royal Guard's realm. Pfft. Cough hack. Ack. *CK it went down the wrong pipe. I coughed until my face turned red, and as the butterfly vanished, I replayed what I had just heard in my mind. Soul Society is being invaded? I said I wanted something with impact, but I didn't mean something this big. I scoured my memories to see if such an event occurred in the original story, but nothing came to mind. Aside from the Quincy invasion 1,000 years ago and the 1,000-year Blood War arc, there shouldn't be anything else, right? Then who the hell is invading Soul Society right now? First, let's just go. Better to move than to think. With that thought, I opened the hell gate, and as I stepped out, I saw something moving in the far distance. It was a presence so massive it felt like my sense of perspective was broken. If it wasn't for the fact that it was trudging forward, I would have mistaken it for a snow-covered mountain. The silhouette was quite familiar. No, it wasn't just familiar, it was something I knew very well. The primordial hollow. The first hollow to ever be born into this world, and the first being to ever touch and end the life of another. The being I had left alone and run away from because I didn't want to get involved. The Great Hollow. Had it been bulking up its body in Hueco Mundo, hiding from the Soul King's gaze? Just how many lives had it devoured? Its mere existence was causing the 3 worlds to creak and groan with instability. If not for the Soul King acting as the wedge in the 6 realms of reincarnation in hell, the 3 worlds would have collapsed long ago. Shit, no wonder they called me. Scowling deeply, I flew in a straight line toward the hollow visible in the distance. If I let this drag on, it's going to get ugly. I'm ending this fast. Chapter 66, The Unyielding One. It was overwhelming. Where on earth could such a monster have crawled out from? The moment that monster tore through the sky and earth to reveal itself, in that singular instant, the only emotion felt was helplessness, despair, terror, fear? Those were laughing matters. Does a human feel despair while gazing at the clear sky? Do they tremble in terror before a towering mountain? Do they feel fear while looking at the radiant moon? No. When faced with an existence that cannot be reached, let alone resisted, one feels nothing at all. One is simply crushed by the weight of it, and even the will to struggle is trampled into the dirt. At that very moment, when everyone present shared the same thought and prepared to surrender their lives. Katsu! It was a roar that rebuked those abandoning their lives, a thunderous shout that jolted their overwhelmed spirits. The surrounding vigilantes and residents shuddered violently and turned their gaze toward the source. Standing there was a man clad in a mountain of muscle and scars, Yamamoto Shigekuni. What do you think you are doing? Evacuate the people this instant. Shigekuni's brow furrowed fiercely as he roared with the intensity of a blazing fire. However, the vigilantes, their bodies already frozen stiff, could only flinch and watch his face. Biba, if you do not move now, consider yourselves dead by my hand. Will you die here by my fist, or will you evade that thing and survive? Who could possibly guarantee they could evade that? In the first place, even if they ran, there was no certainty of survival, but if they stayed still, it was a plain and absolute fact that they would die at Shigekuni's hand. Driven by that immediate terror, the vigilantes tore their eyes away from the overwhelming reality behind them. Gritting their teeth, they began to move the people. This way. Hurry. What is that? What the hell is that? Snap out of it. If you stay here, you die. Run? Run where? How are we supposed to dodge that thing? Save me. Help me. The streets, filled with people trapped in chaos and dread, were a literal screaming hell. Seeing this, Shigekuni grit his teeth and hurled his Haori aside. He sprinted in the opposite direction of the fleeing crowd, toward the gargantuan hollow slowly approaching. Captain Shigekuni. Run. I shall handle this place. Relieved from the hollow's suffocating pressure for a brief moment by the spiritual pressure erupting from Shigekuni, the people fled in a frantic panic. Seeing them go, Shigekuni allowed a hidden, satisfied smirk to graze his lips before turning his head to face the massive hollow alone. Though he didn't show it outwardly, he was just as terrified. A single claw or toenail was the size of a massive boulder, and the limbs they were attached to were, naturally, far larger than that. No matter how vast you are but a mere hollow. Come. I shall show you that size is not everything. Shigekuni stepped forward to first seal the hollow's movement, thrusting both fists toward the hollow's leg. Sakatsu double bone. Air exploded along the path of his fists, shaking the nearby buildings. Then, the moment those fists connected with the hollow's leg, boom! With a cataclysmic roar, the entire vicinity was literally scorched and leveled. Shabby wooden houses lost their forms, reduced to splinters unfit even for firewood. Except for the patch of ground where Shigekuni stood, the surrounding earth was cracked and upturned. It was a heavy strike so immense that even a hollow of that size could not ignore it. But the matchup was simply too poor. It was a single blow. A mere layer of skin. No matter how strong one was, a human could not topple a mountain with a single punch. No, to Shigekuni, that line of reasoning didn't matter. If one blow is not enough, then I shall strike until you crumble. He never intended to end it with one blow in the first place. Shigekuni roared as he began to swing his fists with maddening intensity. The skin was stripped from his knuckles, revealing raw muscle. Blood splattered the ground with every swing. Bone cracked. Yet he did not stop. Even the greatest mountain eventually erodes before an endless storm. Every time Shigekuni's fists connected, the hollow's leg shattered, crumbled, and turned into a pulpy mess. Finally, the wound became too significant for the hollow to ignore, and it began to move. A massive arm swung. It was as if a mountain itself were in motion. He could see it coming, yet he could not perceive its speed. Because of its incomprehensible size, his sense of perspective was utterly shattered. Ha! Standing before the massive hollow, Shigekuni whipped his body, which had momentarily frozen under the pressure. Focus. For what did you train? For what were those years of pain and endurance? For what did you build your strength? For what have you lived? Think. Do not stop thinking. If I take this head on, I die. Feeling this instinctively, Shigekuni threw himself out of the way with all his might, but completely evading such an overwhelming mass at close range was a pipe dream. Ultimately, the hollow's claw grazed Shigekuni's face. Even though it was a mere graze, the force contained within was absurdly immense. For the briefest of moments, Shigekuni lost consciousness. Jarred awake by a dull ache in his neck, he twisted his body midair, but the trailing shockwave sent him flying. After tumbling across the ground several times, Shigekuni finally managed to find his footing. He wiped the blood streaming from his forehead with his thumb and stared at the hollow with cold eyes. If I hadn't twisted my body, my neck would have snapped. No, my entire head would have been torn off. While catching his breath, Shigekuni looked around and grit his teeth. From a single strike, half of West Rakongai had been erased from existence. It was an overwhelming disparity, making his efforts of swinging 1,000 times to barely break one leg seem pathetic. Yet, Shigekuni did not break. Phew. I've done enough warming up. Clenching his fists once more, Shigekuni stepped forward. Seeing this, the hollow began to vent its boiling spiritual power in all directions. Shigekuni could no longer tell if what was trickling down his forehead was cold sweat or the blood flowing from his split brow. The only thing he knew for certain was that whatever this hollow was about to do next was going to be beyond ridiculous. To think a mere insect has reduced me to this. A tiny, insignificant gnat dares. Enraged, the hollow hoisted both fists high. That single primitive action was enough to blot out the sun and plunge the world into shadow. An astronomical amount of spiritual power began to gather in its fists. Soon, a level of spiritual pressure capable of tearing the world asunder concentrated in the hollow's hands. It could not be blocked. No, even if he did block it, the Soul Society would be destroyed. Feeling this intuitively, Shigekuni quietly closed his eyes. He wasn't giving up. This wasn't resignation, he was simply prepared to burn his own life to the ground to do the absolute best he could. Phew! With a spark of flame igniting deep within his chest, Shigekuni snapped his eyes open and leaped into the sky. The hollow brought its elevated hands slamming down to swat and crush the flying insect. Kaya! Fists containing the power to shatter mountains clashed against fists containing the power to crush worlds. And at the very center where the fists met there was light. Shigekuni felt both of his arms, the ones that had intercepted the hollow's strike, being pulverized from the knuckles up to his shoulders, followed by his ribs and spine, as he plummeted toward the earth. Whether his survival was a blessing or a curse was unclear. Amidst pain that felt like his entire body was being torn to shreds, Shigekuni coughed up blood and opened his eyes. Cough. The hollow was still standing. One of its arms had snapped from the recoil, but that was the extent of it. Is it over? I can't feel my arms or my legs. He whipped his body to stand up somehow, but he couldn't even twitch a finger. In fact, far from moving, he felt absolutely no sensation in his legs. Still, they should have escaped, far enough by now. Realizing there were no more voices nearby, Shigekuni finally closed his eyes with a faint smile. Just as he was about to accept his death, a man's voice reached him. Good work. He snapped his eyes open at the sound, and the sight of a man wearing white hakama with a black obi tied at his waist came into view. Why is a person still here? Did they not run? The man, speaking over his shoulder, smiled and poked Shigekuni's chest firmly with a finger. As a surge of nausea made him vomit up a clot of blood, breathing suddenly became much easier. What is this? Just rest. Someone will be here to treat you soon. It's dangerous. You cannot face him alone. Geez, kids these days. Why don't you ever listen? I told you to shut up and rest. Where did this confidence come from? The man was tall, but he didn't seem muscular, and Shigekuni couldn't feel any spiritual power from him. On what basis could he possibly face that thing? He would die for nothing. Had he not trained all this time to prevent such pointless deaths? Get up. You aren't dead yet. If your arms are broken, crawl on the ground and bite him with your teeth. If your teeth are shattered, use your gums. If even that fails, smash your head against him. You certainly are a persistent one. As he spoke, the man forced Shigekuni to lie back down. Shigekuni, with every bone in his body shattered, obviously couldn't resist and was forced to remain flat on his back. Once he confirmed that the warrior was no longer trying to rise, the man finally stood and faced the hollow. Let's move. I'd rather not fight here. As he spoke, the man pulled a tile engraved with a skull from his robes. Hell Gate, Jigakamon. At the man's word, the world split open. Behind the hollow that was massive enough to blot out the world, a gate far larger than even it appeared. Open. The massive gate creaked open, swallowing the hollow whole. Chapter 67. How to Soothe the Void. As I was warming up, watching the great hollow plummet into hell, someone grabbed my ankle. Since there was only one person left in this place to begin with, I knew exactly who it was. Let go. I need to crush that bastard before he wreaks havoc in hell. Who are you? That's what you're curious about. Of all the things to wonder, I scratched my head, thinking for a moment before offering the most appropriate answer. You'll find out naturally later on. I let out a smirk as I spoke. Genryusai. He doesn't go by that yet. Anyway, Yamamoto stared at me with his mouth tightly shut, and no matter how he looks at me with that expression, I have no intention of telling him. He'll find out anyway once he dies, and knowing now wouldn't do him any good. This isn't hypocrisy, I mean it. Yamamoto is destined to die at the hands of Yawatch during the 1,000-year blood war. and then he will fall into hell. Living a long life and committing various sins might be a cause, but the primary reason is that his spiritual rank is too high, just like Hosuki from the old days. Though things have improved since the creation of the 6 realms of reincarnation, this is a fundamental issue with the world itself that the cycle cannot fix. Of course, I could solve it by inspecting everyone at birth and killing off anyone whose spiritual rank is above a certain level to force them back into reincarnation. But f*ck, then what was the point of making the world a decent place to live in? That's just an instant fast track to a dystopia. That if I pulled that kind of shit in the name of management, even the Soul King would lose his patience, break his seal, and come charging out. While I was sighing and scratching my head, Yamamoto looked at me with a stunned face. What do you mean by that? It's just how it is. Don't try to know the truth now, ignorance is bliss. Yamamoto is the guy who will eventually establish the Gotei 13 and spend 1,000 years playing SimCity with the Soul Society. I can't have the future Captain Commander of the 1st Division falling into a criminal spiral because of one word from me. Who would be happy to hear I looked at your face and realized you're going to hell when you die? Especially if it isn't coming from some fake cult leader. But the actual Nether King who crawled up from hell itself. If I were him, I'd think, I'm going to hell anyway, might as well live however the f*ck I want, and go on a total rampage before kicking the bucket. Then I'd have to clean up that mess too. There's no way I'm crazy enough to tell him that. With those thoughts in mind, I glanced toward the hell gate. It was flickering as if protesting, demanding I come back inside before it shut. If I stayed here any longer, I'd have to go through the trouble of opening that cool door all over again. I hurriedly wrapped up the conversation. Anyway, I'm off. Oh, and a guy with a weird fringe is going to show up here soon. Tell him the guy he's looking for is doing fine and not to worry. He'll understand if you just say that. Without waiting for a response, I stepped through the hell gate just before it slammed shut. Phew, almost got locked out of my own house. I brushed the dust off my clothes and smirked at the massive hollow looking up at me from below. What are you staring at, you bastard? Acting like you did nothing wrong. The Soul Society might be different, but this is my territory. It's a place filled with those who deserve to die and those who don't die easily, just like you. So let's go all out. Grinning, I kicked off the air, accelerating through the void to drive my fist into the hollow's head. The hollow, caught off guard by the sudden situation, had its head caved in and died instantly, and not long after it came back to life. Ah, for your information, dying here doesn't mean you're actually dead. So don't expect a quick end. Welcome. First time in hell. Smiling brightly, I raised my fist once more. ******, how do you kill an immortal monster that revives no matter how many times you slay it? Cast a curse that prevents recovery? Surround it with hundreds of barriers to seal it forever? No, wrong. The answer is to keep killing it until it stays dead. Right, this makes exactly 1,000. Where do you think you're going? Come here. I'll send you off comfortably. I grabbed the hollow as it tried to crawl away and delivered a serious flick to its head. Naturally, the hollow's skull burst like a watermelon, and its physical size shrank compared to before. It wasn't that its body was physically breaking down into smaller parts. I'm not some psychopathic freak who categorizes living beings like that. It was simply that its accumulated spiritual power decreased every time it died, causing its physical mass to naturally diminish. When I first saw it, it moved like a living mountain range, but after dying 1,000 times it was barely the size of a local hill. Disappointing. I thought I'd have some fun since it was quite large at first, but after a few hits it just kept keeling over. Weak. No, it's not that he's weak, it's that I'm too strong. Sigh. I had forgotten about it while playing SimCity and preparing Hell Season 1 and 2, but the moment I had to start throwing punches again, that guy came looking for me without an invitation. Yes, emptiness and futility. That agonizing sensation suddenly washed over me. I sprawled out on the corpse of the dead hollowed. My sense of reality drifted away. It felt as if the me standing here wasn't actually me. Everything felt like a staged play. This hollow, hell, the Soul Society, all of it. Ah, here we go again. Because I was too strong, everything was boring. No matter how difficult the problem, a bit of strength usually solved most of it. And if strength didn't solve a problem, it was probably just because there wasn't enough strength involved. In that sense, I was always right. Because I was stronger than anyone. God damn the solitude of the powerful. I let out a long sigh and went limp, overwhelmed by the random thoughts and the sudden drain of motivation. This is exactly why I don't fight. I should have just left it to the 10 kings and rested at the Nether King Palace. Ash. No. If I had stayed at the palace, Gozu would have treated me like trash again. It's strange. I'm pretty sure I left out the ego part when I made them, so how can they treat a perfectly fine living person like garbage? Bah, fine. They must be broken. I decided to think of it that way, because if they weren't broken it would mean I really was living like human trash. Anyway, it should be reviving soon. Stretching and yawning atop the hollow's head, I smacked my lips and lightly tapped the creature's limp skull. But whether it was actually dead or not, there was no reaction even after several taps. Is it really dead? I lifted its arm and dropped it, pushed the body with my foot, but still no reaction. Guess it finally died. I let out a deep sigh, stepped off the hollow, and pretended to head back toward the Nether King Palace. Then whoosh, I spun around instantly. The distance between the hollow and me felt like it had widened slightly. Turning my back again, I pretended to walk away and then suddenly looked back once more. The distance was definitely greater than before. And I hadn't moved a single step. I walked back to the hollow and began tapping its head with my hand, gradually increasing the force, from light taps to heavy thuds, and then until a loud crack echoed. Finally unable to bear it, the hollow twisted its body to dodge my hand. I knew you were alive. The hollow tried to scramble to its feet in sheer terror, but my fist was faster, shattering its head once again. Good grief, at this point I was just bullying a kid. Realizing how pathetic this was, I dragged the dead hollow out of hell. When I ascended back to the Soul Society, Ichibe and Nimeha found me as if they had sensed me immediately. Actually, it wasn't my presence they sensed, but, "Are you here for this guy?" I tossed the limp hollow in front of them, and Nimeha's complexion instantly paled. "Oh shit, how many times did you kill him, Go?" "About 1,000. I tenderized him enough so that you can drop him anywhere in the Soul Society or Hueco Mundo without an issue. The whole point of dragging him into hell was for the balance of the 3 worlds. To make him spit out the soul. Unless he'd devoured over 900,000 years, the only way was to kill him repeatedly in hell. It should be fine to kill him for good here now. Do whatever you want. I'm having an existential crisis. I can't do this anymore. People could call me irresponsible and I wouldn't have an excuse, but isn't it better to be a little irresponsible than to hit a wall and quit everything saying it's all futile?" As I tossed the hollow to them, Nimeha scratched his cheek with a grimace while Ichibe stared at me with that same unchanging expression. "Do you feel empty? If you're going to start talking nonsense like the Soul King, just don't." I had become too strong. I had lived too long. Like I said before, it would have been better if I had been sealed back then and woken up after 1,000,000 years had passed. At least then I wouldn't be feeling this sense of déjà vu about everything, struggling with this void and boredom. No need to lecture me. I know it all even if you don't say a word. I am merely speaking out of concern. If by any 1 in a million chance you were to lose your mind, the 3 worlds would reach their end that very day. You're basically saying be mindful of your position and power. I told you I know. Ho, I told you it's not advice or a warning, it's concern. This monk is playing word games with me. Annoyed, I smacked his head once more, making his lump even bigger. What are you looking at, you bastard? Ha. Me didn't say anything, Goo, you brat. Just your way of speaking pisses me off. This son of a bitch, I taught him English and he uses it however the F***ck he wants. No satisfaction in teaching him at all. Oh no. Wait. Oh, satisfaction in teaching? Ah, right, this is it. A sudden idea struck me, and as a grin spread across my face, Nimeha, who had been reading my mood, gave an awkward laugh. What are you laughing at, you joke of a man? Ouch my ass. Chapter 68. One step too late. What do veterans who have exhausted every bit of content in a game usually do? That's right. They drag in a total noob who knows absolutely nothing and aggressively tutor them until they've groomed them into a magnificent gamer. In slang, it's called smuffing/noob teaching. But there is one thing that must be done before you can mentor a newbie. You have to have reached the very end of that field yourself. No matter what field it may be. If it's mathematics, there's Fermat's last theorem. If it's literature, the Nobel Prize. If it's physics, the Nobel Prize in physics, and so on. If I were just a bit smarter, I might have considered that side, but unfortunately my brain is utterly useless in that department, so I wouldn't even dream of touching it. And if I had the kind of brain capable of solving such problems, I wouldn't be living like this. An extraordinary mind, an endless lifespan, and a body. Nearing absolute perfection. If I had all three, why would I live like this? I would have single-handedly advanced civilization like an alien, taken a lap around the universe, and achieved a science victory. An average man like me, even if I beat my head against the books for hundreds of thousands of years, can't even show his face in front of a real genius. The immediate example is that bastard Tsuneshiro Jaman. In the far future there's Sosuke Aizen or Kisuke Urahara. Even outside the world of Bleach, there's Alfred Nobel, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Richard Feynman, the list goes on and on. Compared to them, what about me? With the sheer amount of time I've lived, I might be able to show off some knowledge in front of a genius, but that would only last for a moment. A true genius would build their own monument of achievement atop the knowledge I've accumulated. There's a reason people say to stand on the shoulders of giants to see a wider world. But life is not a game. It's not restricted to a single piece of content. Math? Science? Literature? They are just some of the many options. As long as you're alive and have time, you can do anything. Among those things, there are tasks that can be done with the body. That's right. Swordsmanship. Martial arts. Of course, you still need a proper foundation. Strictly speaking, you can't just pick up a rock from the street, smash someone's head in, and say, "This is the highly practical art of the rock." It's the same with blades. If you bring a kitchen knife, stab someone in the gut, and call it the art of celebrating the dome concert, or saw a stomach open and call it the art of there is no one inside. What kind of bullshit is that? Therefore, one must master the basics, starting from breathing to footwork, the way to clench a fist and how to throw it. One must create a method to minimize energy consumption and maximize power. The same goes for swordsmanship. Since anyone can simply swing a blade, one must be taught how to draw the optimal sword path that can be used in actual combat. Schools and swordsmanship. To be called a true veteran, shouldn't one master all of this? On that note, I'm retiring. Pardon? Jaman, who was organizing documents, which were basically incredibly long scrolls, listing the records of sinners with a face soaked in fatigue, looked at me with an expression that screamed, "What kind of bullshit is this now?" As soon as he heard my words. Don't pretend you didn't hear me. I'm retiring. Jaman blinked slowly a few times, took off his glasses, and massaged the bridge of his nose. After waiting a moment, Jaman let out a deep sigh and replied in a dying voice. Yes. Please do so. What, you're not even that surprised? Well, what is there left to be surprised about at this point? You speak as if you've been working hard all this time, but who would be surprised if someone who hasn't stepped a foot out of the Nether King Palace for over 10,000 years says they're retiring? Replying with a cynical smirk, Jaman put his glasses back on and continued. Actually, I've always thought it was about time for you to retire. To be honest, I thought it was impressive that you held the position for this long. Hey, isn't your evaluation of me a bit harsh? You're a man who thinks he's the only one who matters in heaven and earth. Someone who won't even spare a glance at something unless it's what you want to do. To be frank, if I had to pick the greatest hedonist in this world, I don't think anyone could beat you, master. Hey, how many days have you been working overtime? I've been working overtime for a month straight. They say you can sleep when you're dead, but somehow I ended up working even harder after I died. There's so much to take care of that I feel like my eyeballs are going to fall out from checking everything one by one. I don't know why the number of sinners has increased so much lately. Sigh. A month, no wonder he's tired. That explains why he's been so sharp today. Shiryu, Rizatsu, and Myron all found successors and retired. Why don't you retire soon too? Out of the four who could be called the original members of Hell, Jaman, Shiryu, Myron, and Rizatsu, 3 had already retired over 100,000 years ago, excluding Jaman. Those 3 retired immediately after Hell's Season 2 construction was finished, and now only Jaman remains. I need a successor before I can retire, don't I? That again. Isn't it time you came up with another excuse? Or just be honest about it. The moment I said that, Jaman stopped his hands and scratched his head. The atmosphere felt like he was about to bring up something important, so I kept my mouth shut. After a brief pause, Jaman let out a long sigh. Once all the figures of my era have retired, I suppose I can retire then. The figures of the same era Jaman was talking about probably didn't mean those 3. If he meant those 3, Jaman should have retired ages ago. Me? I'm an outlier. Who he's likely referring to is the Soul King. Is it guilt, or a sense of responsibility? Whichever it is, it's not something I can solve for him. Fine then. It's your business to handle. Yes. So what do you plan to do after you retire? I don't know. I was thinking of opening a dojo. A dojo that produces multiple people like you, master. Are you preparing for the end of the world? Maybe. Who knows? If I gather and train people like Unohana later, they could be used to crack Yawacha's skull opened. In that sense, couldn't it be seen as preparing for the end of the world? As I chuckled at the thought, Jaman suddenly flinched and stared intently at me. What? Did I say something weird? Sigh. Please don't say such chilling things even as a joke. I felt my heart drop. You don't even have a heart to drop. Anyway, I'm off. I have to start preparing intensely from now on if I want to get things done. I'll leave hell in your hands for a while, so take care of it. Yes. I will manage it reasonably well until you return. Right, keep up the good work. With those words, I stepped out of the palace of the 10 kings where Jaman was working and stretched, the screams of the sinners echoing from below. It's goodbye to that for a while that I don't know when I'll hear them again, but at least for a few tens of thousands of years I won't have to listen to them. Just thinking about it made me feel refreshed and I felt no trace of sadness. Listening to the constant, noisy screeching of sinners only causes stress. Shall I get going? I need to move past the days of aimlessly swinging branches and fists. First, I'll discard my old embarrassing self and start my training from the very beginning. Punching was something anyone could do, and since I had been doing the 10,000 gratitude straight punches with relatively good form, there wasn't much to fix there. Of course. Everything else except for that one straight punch was a total mess. Because of that, the first and most time-consuming task after starting my new training was correcting the habits ingrained in my body. From the time I first started flailing with a wooden stick until now, about 990,000 years, nearly a million, correcting the sheer ignorance built up in my body was no easy feat. I felt the saying that habits ingrained in the body are not easily fixed deep in my bones. So, for the first 100 years, I suppressed my physical strength to the minimum and spent my time relearning footwork and the proper way to grip a sword from scratch. For the next 100 years, I learned how to move without disrupting my center of gravity. And for the following 100 years I learned how to swing a sword, throw a punch, and kick with the correct posture. I spent time creating the connecting movements between one posture and the next. Since I had learned human anatomy by directly seeing and touching the bodies of the sinners who fell into hell over an immense period, it became a bit easier from there. Creating the optimal path for swinging a sword into the next stance, finding the optimal path for using fists and feet, seeking, mastering, learning. I discovered the problem within myself, sought the answer within myself, and found the solution within myself. After spending 8,000 years that way, I finally reached a certain realization. All paths lead to the source, whether it be swordsmanship based on flow, strength, speed, or deception, or even close-quarters combat involving striking and crushing. At their peak, they all eventually take on a similar form. Because it is the most primal movement, it becomes the greatest movement a human can perform. Right, this should be enough. When I finally ended my long seclusion and returned to the Soul Society, the Shinigami Academy, the spot for the local dojo had already been taken by someone else. Chapter 69. An unexpected guest. My preparations may have been rendered meaningless, but I didn't fall into despair or even disappointment. Just because someone else opened a dojo before me or set up shop first, that's no reason for me to give up. Just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you can't score it if the ball won't go in. I can just smash the whole goalpost to pieces. Practicing some physical style positive mind control, I headed into the interior of Reincarnated to do some market research. Reincarnated was as lively as ever. Children were running around laughing brightly and the adults watched them with warm, satisfied smiles. To be honest, I was a little surprised. The Reincarnated I remembered from the original story was nothing short of a living hell on earth. Why a hell on earth, you ask? Well, before the Gotei 13 existed, a Kenpachi would pop up at any moment to butcher people. And even after the Gotei 13 was formed, some mad scientist bastard would kidnap people for biological experiments as casually as eating breakfast. But looking at the atmosphere now, it seemed those things weren't happening at the moment, which was a relief. That if I had come out to build a dojo and happened to witness that kind of crap, I would have popped the perpetrator's skull regardless of who they were. So it's a good thing. What about the things happening where I can't see them? Well, it's unfortunate, but I can't stick my nose into everything. After all, I'm a human, not a god. I am neither impartial nor omnipotent, and I am not the Maitreya who can save all people. Therefore, I only save those who enter my sight and reach of my hands. and even if they escape my gaze, their karma accumulates in their souls. Their sins will be judged in hell after death. What if they're strong enough to cause trouble even in hell? Well, that's when I'd have to step in personally. So for now, I should look for a plot of land for my dojo. I wandered around looking for a suitable site, but I didn't plan on building anything massive. I just wanted to take in and train a few strong ones, so I wasn't being too picky about the conditions. Just land, yeah. Just some land where no one else was living would do fine. This should do. So I staked my claim right next to the Shinigami Academy, otherwise known as the Genji Academy. I guess because the academy's reputation is so high, there were no other buildings nearby, leaving plenty of useful land. What? So what, did they rent out the whole area? Could they even do that in the first place? This is a place without a constitution, let alone real estate laws. It's a place where the strongest guy sits in the big chair, and if he says, that's a bit much, you're punished, and if he says you worked hard, have a drink, you're forgiven. Am I wrong? As soon as I finalized the site, I prepared to build the dojo. First, I leveled and flattened the ground. Then I procured the timber, cutting, grinding, and refining it until everything could be slotted into the frame piece by piece. Phew, all finished. Just like that, while my neighbor, the Genji Academy, was asleep during the night, I completed the dojo. Does it sound impossible? Don't underestimate the civil engineering and carpentry skills I've amassed over 990,000 years. I'm the guy who terraformed all of hell and handled the construction and interior design of the Palace of the Ten Kings and the Nether King Palace single-handedly. A single-story dojo less than 3,500 square feet? If the materials are ready, I can finish that in under an hour. Given half a day with everything prepared, it was more than enough time. What should I call it? After a moment's thought, I realized people wouldn't recognize an unnecessarily flashy or difficult name, so I chose something very simple, Budokan Martial Arts Hall, and so I opened my first and last dojo, or so I thought. A year had passed since I built the dojo on the vacant land next to the Genji Academy. No one is coming. No matter how long I waited, let alone an aspiring student, not even a single ant visited. Though, thinking about it, it was obvious why. What I did was the equivalent of opening a tiny local diner right next to a massive franchise restaurant without any plan. But still, I thought maybe one or two people might show up. I never imagined it would be absolutely zero. I told myself I didn't have high expectations, but the total lack of visitors was quite a shock. Maybe I should have built it a bit further away. Or maybe if I had wandered around doing some marketing, it would have been better. I let out a long sigh at the thought. TSK. I said I didn't care much, but I was annoyed that someone had beaten me to the punch. I built it right next to the academy just to mess with them, but far from screwing them over, I was the one getting screwed. They say if you have a pure heart and do good, good things come back to you, and if you have a wicked heart and do dirty deeds, calamity returns. Since this is a shonen manga world, I guess poetic justice is served quite efficiently. As I lay on my side, letting out a deep sigh and a long yawn, I felt about 5 presences approaching, the first visitors in a whole year. I reflexively jumped up to greet my guests, but the moment I swung the dojo doors open, the sight that greeted me was, unfortunately, not new disciples. They were students from the neighboring Genji Academy carrying loads of what looked like miscellaneous junk. Oh, there's a person. Huh? Wait, what? Wait, didn't they say this was a warehouse? The 5 of them looked at each other and spoke, then began glancing at me with troubled expressions. So, they mistook the dojo I built for a warehouse and were trying to dump their supplies here. It was annoying, but the situation was understandable, and I couldn't really vent my anger on students who didn't know any better. Besides, if you trace back the cause, it was basically my fault for the location. Excuse me, but who are you? As I was thinking, the student who seemed to have the most seniority put down the luggage he was carrying and asked. His attitude was much more polite than expected, so I answered politely as well. I'm the owner of this dojo. Pardon? No, this is the Genji Academy's property. Are you perhaps an acquaintance of Ijisai-sama? Should I call it being acquainted? I did see his face once when I saved his life over 8,000 years ago, but calling that knowing each other well feels a bit of a stretch. No, we aren't particularly close. Then this warehouse is. This isn't a warehouse. It's a dojo I built called the Budokan. Since no one has been coming by, you probably mistook it for a warehouse. So if I understand correctly, this isn't a Genji Academy warehouse, but a dojo maintained by you, sir. That's right. You understood perfectly. At my answer, the student I was talking to turned around with a blank, brain-melted expression. But if the senior couldn't grasp the situation, what could the juniors do? The other students with him had the same dazed looks on their faces. The youngest-looking student, who seemed to have some sanity left, carefully raised his hand. Shouldn't we go back and tell Ijisai-sama about this first, senior? Ah, yes, we should. We apologize for the intrusion. Right, get going then. I watched the students leave, glancing back at me repeatedly, then closed the door and lay back down on the floor. Honestly, I thought they'd barge in saying, "How dare you do business on our turf? You've got guts. We'll burn this dojo down." That's exactly why I chose this location in the first place. My plan was to flip those challengers easily with jujitsu, have a few sparring matches, steal their students, and succeed through noise marketing. My conscience, it hurts. Shit, this hurts my conscience more than I thought it would. If they were overtly bad guys it would be fine, but they were just normal, hard-working, decent kids, and it hurts like hell. Grah! As I clutched my chest in agony from the stinging pain of a guilty conscience, I felt a much larger presence approaching. It was a leisurely stride, as if they were taking a stroll, but with every single step, a thick bloodlust overflowed. It was the presence of someone whose blade was honed to a razor's edge, as if they held hostility toward everything in the world and hatred for all things living. I don't know who it is, but I should get a look at the face of the one broadcasting this much bloodlust. Actually, I think I have an idea, but let's just pretend I don't. Before long, the one who revealed herself was a woman with long, straight hair and languid, half-closed eyes. Fingering the hilt of the sword at her waist, she, Unohana, blinked slowly and spoke. "This is a dojo I haven't seen before. It's been here for a year now." When I said that while lying flat on the floor, Unohana, who had been surveying the surroundings, looked down at me and blinked blankly. Though it didn't show on her face, I got the feeling she was quite surprised. "Who are you?" "The owner of this dojo." As soon as I said that, Unohana furrowed her brows. "Hey, I told you the truth." "Why the attitude?" Chapter 70. Combat is everything. My life was a sequence of battles stretching from the cradle to the grave. From the moment I first opened my eyes in the Rukongai, I had to fight against the vermin who sought out those weaker than themselves. Because if I didn't, I would have died. So I killed them. I thoroughly crushed every opponent who dared to challenge me, using every method at my disposal, until their will was utterly broken and they could no longer stand. That was how I committed my first murder in the Rukongai. Surprisingly, I felt nothing. Even though I had killed someone, it took time for the reality of the act to truly sink in. It was only when the corpse twitching at my feet finally stopped convulsing that I could barely recognize it. I killed him. That was the thought. I felt no guilt. I had simply fought to survive. From then on, my life began to revolve entirely around combat. I fought everyone who came for me. No matter who they were or how many there were, I met them head-on and broke them face to face, thoroughly. Boundlessly. Ruthlessly. In the midst of that existence, an old man visited me one day and taught me the way of the sword. No one lives solely to wound others. You are simply unable to restrain your boiling bloodlust. Saying so, the old man taught me Zanjutsu and became my master. He taught me the correct way to slash and the correct way to thrust, and he taught me how to use power correctly. I devoted myself to the sword as if possessed, and the swordsmanship he taught me showed me a path. A few days later, I encountered a certain man. He was a man practicing with his blade in a secluded clearing. His sword path was entirely different from what my master had taught me. The distribution of weight, the direction of the tip, everything was different. I was curious. I wanted to know which was stronger, his sword or mine. So I slashed him. I felt that by cutting him I would understand. What? Who are you? Is there a need for you to know that? And then I realized that humans are infinitely helpless and fragile when faced with a blade. Come more, entertain me more. You madwoman. Words will clearly not reach you. It was the first time I felt such ecstasy in a fight. As death drew near and tightened its grip on my throat, I felt truly alive. It was enjoyable. So enjoyable that I found myself laughing involuntarily. But that joy did not last long. Eventually my blade severed all of the man's limbs. How soft. I let out a sigh as I looked at the man dying before my eyes. I had no reason to kill him. He had simply happened to catch my eye while I was honing my swordsmanship. Impossible. How could the Katori Shinto Ryu I've polished for 20 years lose to a mere woman like this? Katori Shinto Ryu, so that's what it's called. I see, so that is how one uses it. What? Thank you for teaching me. Now I shall put you at ease. Wait. The man reached out as if pleading for a moment more, but my sword path did not waver. There was no hesitation. Just as I had always done, I struck his neck in a single blow, ending the man's life. As I looked down at the decapitated man, my hands began to tremble. Fear? No, it was nothing like that. What made my hands shake now was neither fear nor guilt. It was anticipation, excitement, and joy. The world is truly vast. Swordsmanship I do not yet know, schools I have yet to encounter. I want to clash blades with them. I want to seize their techniques for myself. I want to kill them. I returned to my master immediately and told him what had happened, asking him a question. Where could I find other styles and other schools? But as soon as the master heard my story, his face turned pale. He drew his sword and pointed it at my throat. The distance between the tip of the blade and my neck was a mere inch. If he intended to slash, he should have held the sword further back. Perhaps it was a thrust, or perhaps a simple threat. Either way, it failed to pique my interest. I had already mastered everything the master had to teach me. Master, I have no intention of fighting you. I meant it. Facing a sword I already knew inside out would bring me no joy. Monster. You monster. Murderous fiend. You aren't even human. I have raised a monster. I had expressed my sincere feelings calmly, but what returned was indiscriminate insults and contempt. Why do you say such things? The sword is not held to wound others. How many people have you killed with that blade, you wretch? Only one so far. Is there a problem? Do you not realize that the very act of killing a person is the problem? None of that mattered to me, because at that moment I had a much more important question. If the sword is not held to wound others, then for what purpose is it held? What? If the very act of killing is a problem, then why do martial arts meant for killing even exist? That is, to protect one's own body. But in the end, isn't slashing someone to death the same result? We are all just humans before a blade. What is the difference? The master could not answer. No, he chose not to. To him, killing me seemed more important than resolving my doubt. And the moment he raised his sword to strike my neck, I drew the blade I had laid beside me and cut him down. Someday you will pay for your sins. The old man who had once taught me the sword wheezed his last words. A hatred and rage that seemed to stick to the floor was directed at me, but no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't understand the reason. A tool created to kill, a technique created to kill. I had simply used them for their intended purpose. What was so wrong with that? I pondered such dilemmas blankly before the corpse of my master, which had been split in two, but no suitable answer came. The person who could have given me an answer was dead, so the search for the truth was lost to me. It doesn't matter, I suppose. Since it was likely a Zen riddle without an answer anyway, it was better to swing my sword one more time in that interval. With that thought, I left the blood-soaked dojo and headed for the next one to master a new sword, and to feel the realization that I was alive. After that, with a single blade in hand, I roamed the entirety of the Rukongai, fighting and killing. Peace was a luxury that blunted the blade. Serenity was a shackle that tightened around the neck, and tranquility was a poison that gnawed at me. There was no reason for combat. Does a bird seek a reason to fly in the sky? Does a tree seek an answer for spreading its roots? No, I simply did it because it had to be done. I did it to live. For me, combat was simply that. I fought because I was born. I fought to live. I fought to fight. I fought to die. Combat was everything. Conflict was the reason for life. Only upon approaching the threshold of death did I truly sense my own existence. I was that kind of broken human being. That was why I fought, killed, and plundered. I took the lives and the swords of my opponents, taking everything they had built. With a twisted heart that hoped someone would one day take my life, my sword, and everything I had built. Yichiru Unohana, the killer blade. I shall execute you. You monster. You are a monster that should not be allowed to live. Vengeance for my master. Die. They were all the same, one after another. Swordsmanship I'd seen somewhere, sword paths I'd seen somewhere, everything I'd seen somewhere before. Boring. Clearly, it was a blade that had once given me joy. Clearly, it was a conflict that had made me feel alive. But now it was nothing more than a one-sided slaughter. I felt as if I would grow weary of the sword, and of battle. If not for the rare powerful opponent who appeared occasionally, I might have grown bored long ago. I wandered around searching for someone who could entertain me, killing as I went. After fighting, and fighting some more for several hundred years, I mastered every style and sword path in existence under the heavens and named myself Yuichiro, and my life became a dull gray. Today, as usual, I intended to seek out someone who could provide me with entertainment, since I was already tired of dojo challenges. No, in the first place, there were no more dojos left for me to crush. Budokan, or so I thought. Until a certain sign caught my eye. A dojo I had never seen before appeared in front of me. It was located right next to the Genji Academy, in a place and of a size that one might mistake for a warehouse if they only spared it a glance. When on earth did this dojo appear? It certainly wasn't here even a year ago. Why would a dojo even be in such a place in the first place? Was it an affiliate of the Genji Academy? Or a dojo that had a grievance with them? No, none of that mattered. A small dojo situated right next to a massive school, that alone was enough to capture my interest. Something is strange. However, my anticipation and interest cooled rapidly as I drew near the dojo. I had thought there would be something special about a small dojo that remained unbowed next to a giant sect, but I was entirely wrong. There weren't even students, let alone a single bird or fly buzzing about. The place was so deathly quiet that it felt uncanny instead. Uncanny? Me, who felt boredom rather than unease or terror even when a blade was shoved before my face. I felt it was uncanny. It seemed there was indeed something here. Calming my racing heart as best I could, I crossed the gate, walked along the path, and finally opened the firmly shut doors of the dojo. As expected, there was no one inside the hall. Touching the hilt of my sword with a sinking feeling, I muttered to myself, "This is a dojo I've never seen before." As I looked around, hoping someone would answer, a voice floated up from beneath my feet. "That's because this dojo was only established a year ago." I hadn't sensed a presence. Internally shocked by that fact, I looked down and made eye contact with a man lying on his side, wearing a snow-white hakama. Who? The owner of this dojo. I could sense absolutely nothing from the man who spoke, and so, without realizing it, I found my brow furrowing.